Welcome to Pick Me Up, I'm Scared, the podcast.
I'm your host, Madeline.
And I'm your co-host, Kenna.
Okay, Kenna, I thought today we would try something different to introduce the episode.
Okay.
So I'm going to think really hard about what today's topic is, and you're going to try to read my mind.
Cool.
Okay, all right. So I'm just going to psychically beam it from my brain to yours. It's going.
Capitalism.
No. Every wrong guess will give you a hint, because otherwise we'll probably never get there. But here's the first hint. Paperclip.
Windows 95.
Oh, no, that was a good guess, though. Okay, here's the next hint. LSD.
Oh, some CIA shit.
It is some CIA shit. Today's episode is about the CIA.
Wow.
You got there fast, honestly.
Yeah. I think I put a couple things together. I used to spend a lot of time watching slightly conspiratorial YouTube videos back in 2008.
That sounds like it will be helpful for today's episode, then. I had some other hints that I'm going to read you that we didn't get to, because honestly, you were way faster than I thought.
Oh, really?
One of the other hints would have been Fidel Castro's beard.
Oh.
Spy cats, which are just cats that are also spies. And then dolphins, but with bombs. So bomb dolphins.
I feel like I've heard of dolphins with lasers.
Yeah, I thought dolphins would get you. For sure, you know what it was.
Fidel Castro's beard?
Yeah.
Wow, I thought it was just a fashion statement.
Well, the CIA thought it might be the source of his power.
Oh my god, side note, when I was in middle school or high school, I read the Che Guevara biography because I thought he was really hot.
Oh. Was his biography hot too?
Basically, I think it was that movie The Motorcycle Diaries. He's just doing hot boy shit, riding around on his motorcycle.
Yeah, I never watched it, but if it's hot boy shit, maybe I will.
I literally don't remember. I just know that I've read it, and I did the thing that you do when you're young and you're I'm gonna get into that because it seems like it's what cool people do, and then you're and the guy is hot.
Oh.
Now I am ashamed. I am very ashamed. Why am I admitting all this stuff?
No, it's okay. You know what? You're in touch with your feminine urge. The feminine urge to have sex with the dude on the motorcycle who did the politics.
Oh no.
That sounds right. That sounds common. I think lots of people have that urge.
Which is fine. It's fine.
It's fine. The feminine and potentially queer urge to have sex with a politics man on a motorcycle. I don't have that urge because I hate motorcycles, but
I don't like motorcycles either, but I think maybe I did when I was younger. I think now I am old and I'm but you get hurt.
You do. It's not safe. Exactly. That's how we know we've entered the adult stage of our life.
I'm I don't want to skateboard anymore. Although I never was really much of a skateboarder to begin with. I mean, in fact, I have only skated very easy things.
I've never been on a skateboard.
Really?
Never. Not even just as a mode of transport. I've never.
Oh my gosh, my best friends in college were such good skateboarders.
Wow.
They were just cool skater girls, and
Well, I'm jealous of that. You've done more than me. You've skated more than me. You're more of a skater boy than me.
Just down Hollywood Boulevard.
That's impressive. That sounds hard. There's a lot of shit happening.
But it's very flat, and it's very slick.
And full of obstacles.
Yeah, I also was younger, so I was less afraid.
Yes, for sure. Okay, well, back to the CIA. I thought the intro would be a good homage to them, since one of their many bizarre projects did actually include mind readers to spy on the Soviets.
Cool.
Yes. And honestly, I think you could have made the cut. I think you were statistically better at reading my mind than the average person might have been.
There's some article that someone who is smarter than me would know, but basically this guy was I proved that ESP was real. And basically, all these people who are study researchers were just wait, this is how he proved it through all of this research. But that means the method we're using for all of this social research is wrong.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, or it's just possible that magic is real. Ooh, fun.
I believe both.
Okay, I like that. I like that. All right, so Kenna, what do you know about the CIA? Like, do you know what they are, what it is, what they are, what they do?
I feel like, okay, to me, when I think of the CIA, because I am a child of the 90s, I think of Men in Black.
That's what I think of too. Literally, when I started researching this episode, I Googled CIA, Men in Black, and then I realized that that was just the movie.
And also the movie Hellboy.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Okay, this is why I think about it. I don't know if it has anything, but I'm like, oh, well, I feel like the CIA came about because of, like, World War II, and because, like, we were spying on people, and they were spying on us, and that's really when, like, the U.S. entered, like, the world stage, because as far as I know, like, the CIA only spies on other countries, and they are technically, I'm using air quotes here, not allowed to spy on citizens, but that might be outdated.
No, that's actually pretty good. You actually have a better understanding of the CIA than I did before I started the episode, because I didn't realize how, like, I knew that they did shit in other countries, but I didn't realize that was, like, the focus of their job. I thought that in the United States and the outside of the United States were both, I thought it was all good. I thought the whole world was the playing field for them, basically. But you are actually more correct. So CIA obviously stands for Central Intelligence Agency, and it's sometimes just called the agency or the company. And it's a branch of the U.S. government tasked with just gathering info, which we can call intel to sound super CIA and on brand.
Yeah, we're putting on our Ray-Bans.
Yes, and then analyzing it to determine potential threats to national security. So they can do stuff domestically, but the primary focus is just, national security. That's it. So it's a pretty broad definition, and it's a notoriously pretty secretive agency, right? They're like our spies, like you said. We're spying. People are spying on us. So when we watch all the spy movies with the fancy flashing lights and like the lipstick that's also like a poisonous dart or something and the high heels that turn into knives, that's all spy shit.
Oh my gosh, I used to watch Get Smart when I was younger, and I was like, oh my god, he has a shoe that turns into a phone. Granted, this was before cell phones were widely used.
Yes. Also, I loved his car.
Oh my god.
It was so cute. Oh. But yeah, so like if all that spy shit, if that's real and happening in the United States, it would be our CIA doing it. But you're right, the CIA hasn't always existed. It was founded, like you said, after World War II.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Honestly, I think it is not because like I know this from like history class. I think it's just literally from picking up in movies.
Wow, that's impressive.
And I think it's because I watch a lot of superhero movies, and I was thinking about the X-Men. The first X-Men that came out in like the year 2000. That movie rocks in my opinion.
I need to rewatch. Yeah, so I actually thought this is interesting because this is the first episode I've done where the reason it was founded or the reason the thing is bad or the reason the thing exists is not racism.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It is the other thing, though. It's capitalism. The CIA was made to uphold capitalism. So you remember from our episode about communism that in 1917, the Russian Revolution happened, which started a chain of events leading to the formation of the Soviet Union. So by 1945, there was this idea floating around about this thing called the Iron Curtain, right? Which was just an imaginary line drawn on a map, which is just like every other line drawn on a map, I guess. They're all imaginary. But this one symbolized the world divided into two pieces through Europe, with the eastern side influenced by the Soviets and communism, and the western side influenced by like the United States and the UK and capitalism. So on one side of the Iron Curtain, the western side, we developed NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is a military alliance of Western nations, which basically just says, hey, if any one of us is attacked, it's like an attack on all of us, we'll defend you. And on the east side of the Iron Curtain, they had the same thing with their own military alliance called the Warsaw Pact. And this is kind of the foundation for the Cold War as we think of it. A war based on rivalry between these Eastern and Western nations with nuclear weaponry on both sides and this looming fear that at any moment the other side could launch the nukes and wipe out like half the planet and we'd all be dead.
Yeah, it's funny because my mom is a boomer and she talks about like, oh yeah, in school we had nuclear drills in school. Like, go under the desk. And she's like, I don't think that would have helped us in a nuclear attack.
No, going under a desk will not save you from a nuclear attack. But yeah, so like then by 1961, even the Berlin Wall was built, which formally separated East Germany from West Germany along this Iron Curtain divide. So in the midst of this kind of political climate, back in 1945, like post-World War II, like you were talking about, Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of Britain, sent a telegram to U.S. President Harry Truman saying, hey, look, the Iron Curtain exists. It's falling all across Europe. Oh, no. And we need to stay on guard and work together on this, right? So then Truman's like, yeah, got it. So then he starts his, like, preparations for the Cold War. And he decides that there needs to be a way for him, the president, to be totally informed about everything going on, like, all the time, all over the world. So on January 22nd, 1946, he issued an executive order, and boom, the Central Intelligence Group was created, or the CIG, which carried the helm of the previous intelligence agency, which was the Office of Strategic Services, which was, you know, for military stuff, but not really like a separate entity. So from the jump, this whole situation just like reeks of weird spy movie shit. Like 2 days after the founding, there's this ceremony where Truman installs his friend Rear Admiral Sidney Sowers as the first director of the CIG. And he gave him a black coat, black hat, and toy dagger and called him the director of centralized snooping.
Okay.
Yeah, so right away, it's all very get smart, like you were talking about. It's very, yeah. So they're spies, and everything is just, like, going wrong all the time and get smart,
so
right?
They're kind of campy.
Yeah, they're campy. And one time on Reddit, somebody asked, they were like, somebody who's worked for the CIA, what are you allowed to tell us without getting killed? And people, like, just wrote things, you know, whatever. Pretty innocuous things, but somebody said, it's more get smart than James Bond. Which means it's more comedy of errors than, like, really cool, slick, fun, sexy catch bad guys or whatever.
We don't get the, like, cool... Although, okay, I will say, though, that James Bond is always getting caught, and he's always telling whoever he's hooking up with who he is.
Yeah.
So he's also kind of fucking up.
Well, we'll get into this later, but the CIA realized that pretty much if you have sex with anybody, afterwards you'll probably tell them everything.
Cool.
Yeah, they got into
Or
that.
not cool. Wait.
I mean, I don't know. It's like, do you want to root for the CIA? Do you want to... Are there bad... Who are the bad guys? What is the bad guys communism?
Yeah, side note, I was listening to that David Graeber book, like, I think it's like the Utopia of Rules or something, and he was like, he was breaking down, like, structuralism, and he's like, so, Sherlock Holmes and James Bond are opposites, because they both work for, like, they both are, like, crime fighter. Basically, he's like, they're both bureaucrats, but Sherlock Holmes is an amateur, and he's good at his job. And James Bond is a bureaucrat for the state and a professional, and he's bad at his job.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I guess that checks out, because the CIA people say that, yeah, it's more of a series of weird botched programs and funny gadgets that don't quite work right than anything running smoothly at any given time.
And I'm guessing, and this is where all our money goes.
Oh, the money's interesting, actually. We don't know where the money comes from or goes. Yeah, so like a year after the CIG, it's like made official, and the Security Act of July 26, 1947 establishes it formally under its new name, the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, as we think of it today. So by 1953, the CIA was pretty established in the U.S., working in conjunction with the president and the military to gather intelligence and also to take on their own random spy initiatives. In its first 6 years, the CIA grew 6 times in size, and employees moved from Washington, D.C. to the new headquarters in Langley, Virginia. So the CIA currently has like 5 directorates, which are little branches within it, and by 1953, 3 had already been established. So the directorates have pretty impressive names, honestly. Like, they sound very dystopian 1984 in a way I at least appreciate from like a branding perspective for them. Like, it just sounds scary. Okay, so we have the Directorate of Analysis.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's just what it sounds like. They provide intelligence analysis, and they inform U.S. senior advisors. The CIA describes this as, like, puzzle solvers, but I think of them as, like, you know, the, like, in 1984, how there were all the little branches?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, you know how there was, like, thought crime, or then there was, like, the department of, like, the people who did the writing? What was that one?
I don't remember. I haven't read that since, I think, middle school.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever the ones were who wrote the news and they were like, this is what's going on in the world and we're always at war with Eurasia or whatever, I feel like this would have been a branch in that, I think.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So then there's the Directorate of Operations, and this is the group, this is like actually really scary. This is the group that gathers intelligence directly from people, which is pretty vague and expansive as far as definitions go. And I assume it just means they like travel to other countries and wear elaborate outfits and sneak into balls and like seduce foreign dignitaries to try to get information about like where hidden missile silos are or something. But it's probably just that they torture and abuse people to get info out of them, right? Like it's got to be that. I don't know. So not to malign the great CIA agent in my computer right now. I don't know what you do. This is just what I thought in my head. Don't come for me, please. All right, so then the third one is the Directorate of Science and Technology. And these are the people who develop the tech used by the CIA for things like surveillance systems, satellite reconnaissance systems, stuff like that. And then there's the Directorate of Digital Innovation. This is the newest one. It wasn't part of it, you know, when the CIA first came out, but they're in charge of developing tools and techniques for teams to use. So I think they do the lipstick blow dart stuff.
Cool.
Right? That's what I get.
I mean,
think.
uncool.
I mean, it's kind of cool.
Depending
on who you use it on.
It's cool. Like,
if I had one, I'd think it was cool.
Again, from like a camp perspective, you're like, yes. Like lipstick blow darts, like let's do this.
Right.
But then from like a real reality perspective, you're like, well, why?
I don't want the military to have lipstick blow darts. I just want me to have them.
I want cool people to have them.
Yes, same. Okay, so then last is the Directorate of Support. So these are like the backbone of the CIA missions. They supply facilities, medical services, logistics. So like if you're watching the spy movie and the spy's in trouble and they call back to like the headquarters and someone answers and is like, oh, I'm going to get you an escape route and there's a house here and your new ID's there. That would be these people, I think, the Directorate of Support. So the goal of the CIA right out of the gate was just like contain communism. Like I had no idea before I did this episode how obsessed with communism the CIA is.
Yeah, it sounds about right to me.
Yeah, it's like all they think about. It's all communism all the time. They're obsessed. So stopping the spread of like the Reds across the world who are surely coming for your house and your car and your dog and who knows, maybe even your baby or whatever the Red Scare propaganda was at the time. That's what the CIA was all about. There was this one poster that came out in 1947 that showed the American flag and it's painted, right? And it's just in flames. It's all flames. And then there's like a man in front choking a woman in front of it. And then there's text that says, is this tomorrow? America under communism. Yeah, so all of this was going on at this time.
Yeah, I read or heard some theory that basically like people were so afraid that America would become communist that is the reason why the New Deal passed, is because we're like, we'll give you a little bit, but we can keep the main capitalism. That way you don't go full communist.
That's the same thing as Keynesian economics when we talked about that. He was like, here, do a little socialism, but only because I love capitalism so much and I don't want it to all go away.
Maybe you were the one who told me, but it's like, wow, okay.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Also, the poster's funny to me because I'm like, oh yes, the USSR's main objective, strangling random women on the street. You know, like how is that communism? And so, you know, right away, everything about the inner workings of the CIA, it's kept pretty hush-hush in the name of national security. And this is the money thing you were talking about. So when they get money, nobody knows how much money they get. It's a secret. They build it in to the budgets of other government agencies, and then the funds are transferred discreetly from the other government agencies to the CIA to obscure how much money they're actually getting, so that nobody knows.
That doesn't seem it could be mishandled or misused in any way.
Yeah, it's really mishandled and misused. And also, some people are like, is that even constitutional? Like, there's all these questions about whether they even can do it.
None of this shit sounds constitutional, but also, like, I'm not a constitutional scholar, and I have a whole other take on that for some other time.
So, you know, most of the operations that the CIA does, it's all classified, so it's hard to even know what they do with this money. The only way we do kind of know what they do is through declassified documents. So government documents, they default to becoming public or declassified 10 years after they're issued. However, you can request to have them classified for up to 25 years, at which point declassification review is automatic with 9 exceptions. And if the documents hit one of those 9 exceptions, they can actually be classified for 50 years. then reviewed, and at that point they fall under 2 exceptions, then they can be classified for 75 years with special permission. So a lot of the stuff that we're learning now, like, could be declassified just now, but it's from like the 50s, potentially. So it just depends. So we kind of can piece together what the CIA has been up to since its founding just by looking at all these declassified documents. And that's how we kind of get a sense of what the CIA actually does. So the first kind of thing that the CIA did, they kind of did even before they were the CIA. Like back when they were still the Office of Strategic Services, that's when Project Paperclip happened. Do you know anything about that?
A little.
Yeah, it's the bad one. It was 1946. It was right after the war. And President Truman authorized a program to lure Nazi scientists to the United States after World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fucked up. And the idea was simple, right? Come to the U.S. and help us with our military efforts. We'll grant you safety from the fallout of everybody figuring out all the evil Nazi shit you did. And this way, all your evil Nazi program genius won't fall into the hands of the Soviet Union. So Operation Paperclip's most famous recruit was this rocket scientist, Werner von Braun, who would go on to mastermind NASA's Apollo moon missions.
Yeah, it's like wild, all the stuff that like NASA was intertwined in.
Oh, I had no idea NASA was, I thought it was the one pure thing we had. No, it's way. Nazis. It's Nazis. So von Braun had been a member of the SS who went to concentration camps and handpicked slaves to work for him on his project. So he's like an evil fucking dude. And that was just one of them. There was this other guy, Hubertus Strughold, who was a physiologist and medical researcher, and he headed the German Air Force Institute of Aviation Medicine, known for its torturous medical experiments on inmates in the Dachau concentration camp. And then when he came to the U.S., he was chief scientist of the Aerospace Medical Division at Brooks Air Force and has since been credited as the father of space medicine.
Oh, no.
I know. Yeah, just real bad. Some Nazis. And then there's another one, Walter Schreiber, I think is how it's pronounced. He was a former Nazi general who oversaw inhumane medical experiments involving blow weapons that resulted in countless deaths. And following the war, he was captured by the Soviets, but then he defected to the United States, where he worked for various government entities before finally settling in Texas at the Air Force School of Aviation Medicine. So roughly 1,600 of these fucked up Nazi scientists came to the U.S. along with their families to work during the Cold War under Project Paperclip. Now, Truman actually forbade the agency from recruiting Nazis or Nazi supporters to join the agency, but he also officially sanctioned the program. So that's mixed signals, right? But basically, he said that to be like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I don't want to see any Nazis in here, meaning change all their documents, make them look clean.
Oof.
Yeah, real bad. And they did. They just whitewashed the histories of these scientists when they brought them into the country, essentially creating full cover identities for them, but still under their names so that they could safely enter the U.S. and become employed by the government. And they lived here in safety and comfort, doing their highly paid, esteemed jobs for the rest of their lives, which is really fucked up. So right away, this is like the foundation that we see the CIA being built on, right? It's ruthless, and it's militant, and it's fucked up.
It's kind of just like... Yeah, like, it's like we will do anything to get what we want.
Right, and what the United States wanted more than anything was to stop the spread of communism, which makes sense, right? Because the United States is capitalist. We have all these people who own businesses, people who are extremely wealthy, and they don't want that compromised. So you really see the extent that people are willing to go to just to ensure and uphold capitalism, which is really what I didn't understand about the CIA before doing this episode. I'm like, wow, you guys did all this fucked up shit just for capitalism, in the name of capitalism. So the next kind of big project they took on, this one was the wildest thing that I researched. Honestly, this was shocking. Do you know about Project Mockingbird?
No.
Oh, I think you would like this because of your major, because you did like journalism type things, right?
Ooh.
Okay, so you won't like it. It's fucked up and horrifying.
Oh, God.
Yeah. But from 1948 to 1976, the CIA ran this thing called Project Mockingbird. And this was after they officially become like the CIA as we know it. And this is one of the earliest, but also potentially most dystopian things that they did. So in 1948, Frank Wisner was appointed director of Office of Special Projects, which then became the Espionage and Counterintelligence branch of the CIA. Wisner was told to create an organization that concentrated on, and this is a quote, propaganda, economic warfare, preventative direct action, including sabotage, anti-sabotage, demolition, and evacuation, subversive against hostile states, including assistance to underground resistance groups, and support of indigenous anti-communist elements in threatened countries of the free world. That's the quote. So that was his job. So Wisner then launched Project Mockingbird, which is a propaganda program designed to influence the American media. So Wisner recruited Philip Graham, who owned the Washington Post, to help run the project. Graham recruited several other media members, and by 1950 had several respected members of the New York Times, Newsweek, CBS, and other media posts under his helm for Mockingbird. So the goal of Mockingbird was to write media pieces influencing how the American public saw communism. Very like, oh, it was the Ministry of Truth. That's what it was in 1984. Very
God.
Ministry of Truth. And it worked. One of the most prominent Mockingbird journalists was Joseph Alsop, whose articles appeared in over 300 different newspapers.
Oh my God.
And other journalists who signed on to write pieces promoting the views of the CIA were Stuart Alsop from the New York Herald Tribune, Ben Bradley from Newsweek, James Reston from the New York Times, C.D. Jackson from Time Magazine, Walter Pincus, the Washington Post, Walter Winchell, the New York Daily Mirror, Drew Pearson, Walter Lippmann, William Allen White, Edgar Ansel Maurer of Chicago Daily News, Hal Hendricks of the Miami News, Whitlow Reed of the New York Herald Tribune, Jerry O'Leary of the Washington Star, William C. Baggs of the Miami News, Herb Gold of Miami News, and Charles L. Bartlett of the Chattanooga Times.
Yeah, and what's wild is, like, those are, like, heavyweights of the industry at the time. Like, if you take, like, journalism history classes, like, those people are in it.
Yeah,
Like,
those are
the
big
major
deals.
players.
Yeah, so the CIA provided these journalists with classified information sometimes to help with their work, and they often, sometimes just, like, wrote pieces commissioned directly by Wisner himself, where he'd be like, yeah, this is what we want people to think. Just put it out there. And after 1953, the program was taken over by Alan Dulles, the director of the CIA then. By this time, Mockingbird had major influence over 25 different news agencies in the U.S., which, included CBS, Time Magazine, Life Magazine, the New York Times, New York Herald Tribune, the New York Post, and of course still the Washington Post, but also around the globe, with international news agencies being paid by them to write pro-CIA perspective stories, mostly about how fucked up and evil communism was. So they were just literally putting anti-communist propaganda out through these newspapers nonstop, which is why I think today in the United States, so many of us are confused about what communism even is. Like, this media has, like, lingered in our mind. And then some journalists and publishers at this time, under Mockingbird, they were paid with bribe money used for funds intended for totally different projects. And Frank Wisner himself admits that the main goal of the program was to make the American public fear communism. So in 1954, Wisner arranged the funding for the Hollywood production of Animal Farm by George Orwell, which is really weird because Orwell was a socialist and he wrote that book to promote socialism. But the U.S. thought they could spin it into being a story about the evils of communism instead of, like, the evils of capitalism, which is what it was about, which is kind of that thing we see a lot where, have you ever seen this, where people are like, this is what housing will look like under communism, but it's just, like, pictures of tents, like of unhoused people in the United States, and other people are like, what are you talking about? That's literally capitalism now. Like, that is capitalism now.
I feel like it's like when you date someone and they accuse you all the time of cheating when they're actually the cheaters.
Yes, it's projection. Yes. So in the 1950s, there were 3,000 salaried and contract CIA employees all engaging in specifically anti-communist propaganda. Additionally, Wisner was able to censor newspapers from just reporting certain events completely, like the CIA's plot to overthrow the governments of Iran and Guatemala. The CIA also used Mockingbird to influence and create their own commercial films as another arm of propaganda. So one of the things that they were concerned about is they were concerned about racism, because the left was basically saying, like, look, there's so much racism in the United States. How do we actually think America is a democracy based on equal rights? So the CIA was like, oh, fuck, we got to make it look like there's no racism here. So they forced Hollywood to include more black people in the backgrounds of their movies to make the country appear more integrated and less segregated on film.
Whoa.
Yeah. The CIA also funded a number of pro-USA anti-capitalist novels and artists at the time, including Arthur Schlesinger and Jackson Pollock.
Interesting. You know, there is a really good season of You Must Remember This by Karina Longworth. and she does like Hollywood history. She did an entire season on basically the blacklist in Hollywood in the 50s, and she explains like the because like communism was actually very popular in Hollywood, like pre World War II. Because a lot of the people who like basically like if you were a communist, you were against Hitler. And then what it turned into is like the communists were against America, and then they were it's like this whole thing that she explains really well.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
You know what's super kind of along with that actually is that there was like this period where the CIA got really powerful, and even the politicians started to fear Project Mockingbird because they were like, oh shit, you guys can just make American people think whatever you want. Haha, that's bad for us. So then McCarthy in the Blacklist era was like, the CIA is the communists. You've got all the communists. And then the CIA was just like, you want to see what we can do, old man? You want to fuck around? And then they just ran this whole anti-McCarthy campaign, and everyone hated McCarthy. And he was like, never mind, continue about your day. So it was this really weird thing where like Project Mockingbird got so successful that it was like two branches within the U.S. government like fighting each other for power.
Yeah, it's so...
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's so... I wish... when you're just like... You're like, why?
Yeah, I think like also like we know that government propaganda exists, but to see it all declassified in government documents and laid out so succinctly with like names and newspapers and all of this, you're like, whoa, there's no way to deny it. It's very literal right there.
You see why people go really extreme with conspiracy theories because they're like, because of stuff like this. You're like, I guess we were being lied to. And then, you're like, well, what else?
Right. You don't know what to trust. So Project Mockingbird continued throughout the 70s. And then Henry Luce, the owner of this like huge media empire in the US, he signed on to help. And he was no stranger to morally slanted subjective media and his newspapers. He used all his newspapers actually to get Eisenhower elected. And in 1953, as thanks, Eisenhower had appointed his wife Claire Booth Luce to be the ambassador of Italy. And there, she was heavily involved in covert anti-communist activities with local CIA personnel, where they managed to block the takeover of the centrist governments that were in power there. So, the Luces were the perfect people to recruit, basically, for this. They hated communism, they had a bunch of money, they wanted to stay rich, and they were willing to use their newspapers to do it. So it wasn't until 1976 that George Bush, who had been the recently appointed director of the CIA, made it officially against CIA policy to pay news correspondents to write stories. But he added that the CIA would welcome voluntary unpaid cooperation of journalists, leaving the future pretty ambiguous. Because we know we don't track the CIA's money anyway.
Oh, okay. So, it's another wink wink.
Yes, another wink wink. So this could still be happening today, and we wouldn't know for potentially up to 75 years until the documents are being declassified.
Fuck, man.
Yeah, so kind of following this, one of the next major kind of declassified things that the CIA did that I thought was interesting is from 1947 and 1951. And this happened in France. So in 1947, the newly founded CIA became involved in communist labor uprisings in France. They provided arms, money, and disinformation programs from their Project Mockingbird kind of resources to help Corsican criminal syndicates in Marseille squash the uprisings of the labor advocates and the communists and gain power. The Corsicans, do you know this word?
Corsican?
Corsican.
Like from Italy?
Yeah, maybe. They gained political influence in part thanks to the CIA, and these conditions allowed them to establish long-term partnerships with mafia drug distributors in the region. So this effectively made Marseille the post-war heroin capital of the Western world, thanks to CIA funding.
Wow.
Yeah, and Marseille's first heroin laboratories were opened in 1951, only months after the CIA-backed Corsicans took over.
Oh, wait, I think there's like an out-of-print book where an ex-CIA agent or DEA agent was like, yeah, the CIA definitely uses drug money to fund its operations.
Oh, yeah, we're going to get into it, but basically the CIA funds itself mostly with drugs.
Oh.
So then from 1950 to 1970, there was this other whole affair that I've actually seen people like touch on in like Hollywood movies, but it was Air America. Have you ever heard of Air America?
Wait, just like the airline?
Yeah, the CIA owned it.
Huh?
Yeah. So in 1946, Whiting Wilcorby.
That sounds like a 1940s name.
I can't pronounce it. You know, I'm bad at pronouncing proper nouns. So this person, and then former U.S. military pilot Claire Lee Chennault, they started this passenger and cargo airline called Air America. And the company actually initially was called Civil Air Transport, or CAT, and it was based in China. So China at the time was also undergoing revolutionary communist action, with Mao leading the communists against Western-backed opposition. So this Civil Air Transport, aka the future Air America, was designed to conduct airlift operations supplying food and supplies into China on the side of the anti-Mao capitalist fighters. However, Mao was victorious in December of 1949, and the CAT kind of just financially fell apart. So in August of 1950, the CIA secretly purchased the airline. 9 years later, the CIA changed its name to Air America. So Air America was used in a number of covert CIA operations. During Vietnam, for example, Air America transported U.S. personnel in and out of the country in secrecy and used the airline to conduct photo reconnaissance of the Viet Cong, which was the Vietnamese communists fighting in the north against the U.S.-backed South. The majority of Air America pilots had no idea that the CIA was their employer. But they still ended up assisting in search and rescue missions for downed U.S. pilots and other black ops activities with no idea that they were even doing it. One pilot, Neil Hansen, said that during the Vietnam War, he and his colleagues in the firm were shadow people, and that operations in Asia were irregular and unknown.
Oh my gosh. Side note, what I was thinking about, it's oh, no wonder we don't have social programs or a social safety net in the United States, because we hate communism so much.
We hate it so much. So explaining one mission, Neil Hansen said, this is a quote from him about what this experience was like being an Air America pilot. And he eventually did realize that, yes, he worked for the CIA. He said, "My job was to get a guy out of Vietnam and into Thailand without going through the legal formalities of customs and immigration. It was made very clear that I was not even supposed to look at the passenger. We filed a legitimate flight plan to Bangkok with Tak Lee as my alternate. Then, just before letting down into Bangkok, I was to announce that I was diverting to my alternate. U.S. Embassy officials in Saigon assured me that no one would get upset over this minor change in plans. They would send one of the spooks from the embassy to make sure everything went smoothly. Everything went like clockwork. The passenger got off in Taki and walked to another curtained black car. I refueled, cranked up, and was halfway off the runway when 2 jeep loads of Thai soldiers blocked the taxiway and raised their rifles. When in deep crap, it's best to act very dumb and quiet. Although the Thais detained me for a week, they finally bought my story of being lost and let me go back to Saigon." So that was his experience. So Air America pilots also became involved in the CIA's secret war in Laos, where they recruited the male population to fight the Pathet Lao rebels. The male people depended on a poppy field for their income, which they cultivated into opium and transported for sale. However, when the Lao rebels captured the area of land regularly used for the aircraft transportation of opium, the CIA-backed Air America got involved. As Alfred McCoy explains in his 1972 book, The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia, which is a very interesting title, I'm intrigued. Without air transport for their opium, the male faced economic ruin. There was simply no form of air transport available in northern Laos except the CIA's charter airline, Air America. And according to several sources, Air America began flying opium from mountain villages north and east of the plain of Jars to General Veng Pao's headquarters at Long Tien. Air America was known for flying Mao opium as late as 1971. Mao village leaders in the area west of the plain of Jars, for example, claimed that their 1970 and 1971 opium harvests were brought up by Veng Pao's officers and flown to Long Tien on Air America UH-1H helicopters. This opium was probably destined for heroin laboratories in Long Tien or Viet Nam, and ultimately for GI addicts in Vietnam.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so at the same time, the Nationalist Chinese Army, which was organized by the CIA to wage war against the communists in China, and soon the Golden Triangle, which was parts of Burma, Thailand, and Laos, along with China, all became the world's largest source of opium and heroin. According to reports, Air America flew drugs all over Southeast Asia during this time. It's also reported that a laboratory built at CIA headquarters in northern Laos was used to refine heroin, at CIA headquarters. After a decade of American military and CIA intervention, Southeast Asia had become the source of 70% of the world's illicit opium and the major supplier of raw materials for America's booming heroin market. When communists eventually won over the U.S. in South Vietnam at an act called the Fall of Saigon here in the U.S., but which I've actually seen Vietnamese communists say was just the reunification of Vietnam after defeating imperialist U.S. forces that had, like, ravaged the region for years, it was Air America that supplied 24 helicopters to evacuate 7,000 people from the country.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. Also, just the thing about the fall of Saigon, like, that's what I always heard, like, when Americans, like, lost the war, right? So you had the communists in North Vietnam, and you had, like, the U.S.-backed pro-capitalists in South Vietnam. And when the North, the communists took Saigon, everyone in the U.S. was like, that's the fall of Saigon. But I follow some Vietnamese communists on Twitter, and they're like, that was not the fall of Saigon, that was the reunification of our country after we expelled the imperialist, like, Americans who were, like, wrecking our entire country. And I'm like, wow, even that, I didn't even think about how, like, Project Mockingbird, like, calls it the fall of Saigon, and even just that word, you're like, oh, it's falling, oh, it's a defeat, you know, but, like, obviously it wasn't a defeat, like, the U.S. never should have engaged in the Vietnam War. So I thought that was, like, very interesting. So the next kind of interesting thing that happened while the CIA was, like, obsessed with fighting communism is that they ended up making a porn.
Wait, what is this porn? What's the theme? Wait, is it, like, James Bond themed?
Okay, wait, I think you could probably guess the motives for making it pretty easily.
To, like, I don't know the motive.
Okay, I'll tell you.
To make people too horny for communism.
Yes. No. So in the 1950s, during the Cold War, the CIA thought that if they could sexually humiliate political leaders, it would threaten the movement of communism throughout the region. So they were like, if we could take these prominent communists and sexually humiliate them, no one will respect them anymore, and no one will want to be a communist.
Wow, okay.
So they targeted Indonesian President Sukarno, who basically thought that the U.S. was a flaming pile of capitalist bullshit garbage propaganda and wasn't shy about saying this. He actually started out kind of sympathetic to the U.S., which makes him unique. So early on, he'd say things like, to me, both the Declaration of Independence and the Communist Manifesto contain underlying truths, but the West doesn't permit a middle road. That was him being kind of like, well, I don't hate you guys, but, like, could you be more flexible? But as the U.S. got increasingly mad at him, he started to realize how fucking death culty the U.S. was about capitalism, and then eventually was just like, America only likes you if you're on the side she selects. If you don't go along with her totally, you're automatically considered to have entered the Soviet bloc. So he was just like, fuck you guys. Like, I try to be nice to you, and you don't care. You just want all or nothing. So this is kind of what we see the U.S. does, right? We find people with mild critiques of us, and then we just, like, cajole them into absolutely fucking hating us by doing the most awful shit we can think of to them, right? Like, we find someone who's not necessarily an enemy, but maybe a critic, and then we turn them into an enemy as fast as we can for some reason. This is, like, our thing. So whatever, the CIA is getting annoyed that President Sukarno isn't, like, obsessed with us or whatever, and they decide to attempt to discredit him by making a pornographic movie starring a body double wearing a lifelike mask of him.
So they're making revenge porn.
They're making revenge porn of the Indonesian president.
They're like, does this make you horny for capitalism?
Yeah. So they actually made it. They made it in Hollywood. I assume Van Nuys. I assume they made it in Van Nuys, right?
Somewhere in the valley, my guess.
Yeah, probably. And then images from the production were circulated throughout political groups in Indonesia. And they were like, haha, this is going to work. But in the end, it turned out that actually nobody fucking cared. So
I like it. Honestly, isn't that kind of fucked up how that works? If you're like, we have this evidence against you. And they're like, cool, yeah. I don't fucking care. And then you're like, what?
Yeah, you're like, release it.
They're like, I care. Yeah, I'm terrible. What of it? And you're like, what? I suck.
Like it. I like the idea that the president was just like, that's hot. I'm hot. Thanks.
Or he's like, he's like, cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the CIA basically made a whole ass porno for no reason whatsoever. Okay, so going off the whole porno thing, the next thing that I thought was interesting is that from 1947 to 1991, somewhere in here, I'm not exactly sure why, an incident occurred that I just nicknamed Your Dicks Are Small. So this one never made it past the planning stage, but it was just so special, I had to include it. In a humiliating display of how men's brains work, the CIA thought it would be an effective way to demoralize Soviet troops by making them think that their dicks were small. Like, this is like a serious. So they had this plan they came up with. They're like, we're going to buy extra large condoms, but then we're going to repackage them and label them size medium. And then we're going to drop them over Soviets. And the message would be like, suck it, USSR. We Americans have big, huge dicks. So they would think that the American extra large condoms were American size medium condoms because everyone's dicks were just so huge here.
Another thing that I heard of is they researched making a bomb that would make everyone in the vicinity basically horny for each other and make out with each other.
I love that. Yeah, I just love that these are like adults in the room coming up with these plans.
Yeah, like...
Yeah, they're like, what if everyone kissed? What if we told them our dicks were big? And other people are like, I like it. Write it down. Write it down.
What? I love that. What if everyone kissed?
Yeah, I'm like, who's coming up with these plans? They're like, that's how you're gonna beat communism with gay? I'm not opposed to it. We can have both.
Go ahead, make a gay bomb.
Yeah, make a gay bomb. So this other thing they did, which was kind of funny, is in 1958, they had a plot that revolved entirely around Dr. Zhivago. Do you remember this book or movie?
It sounds familiar, but I don't recall.
Okay, so I, for some reason, read this when I was a teenager. But basically, there was a CIA plot to just give people in the Soviet Union copies of the book Dr. Zhivago. And the book is about like a doctor poet who's a staunch individualist critiquing the Bolshevik Revolution. It's kind of an insufferable book. But the CIA saw this as an excellent potential propaganda tool. So they worked with their allies in the Dutch intelligence service to deliver 1,000 copies of the book into Soviet citizens' hands, just like the average Soviet citizen, when they were visiting the World's Fair in Brussels in 1958. The Vatican even helped with this. The Vatican was like, that sweet, sweet Dr. Zhivago plan, we want in on that. And the books were bound in unmarked blue linen and wrapped in brown paper. And the CIA really thought that they would stir up anti-communist sentiment.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. Very, like, oh, all right. So the next thing that they kind of did while they're trying to fight communism around the globe is probably their most famous operation based on declassified information. It's MK Ultra.
Oh, is that the one where they do all that acid?
Yes, it's the acid one. So they actually did this from 1953 to 1973. It was like a really long program. Yeah.
What the fuck?
So basically, in 1953, the New York Times published a story saying American prisoners of war were coming back from Korea having been converted to communism through brainwashing. While we clearly can't trust anything the news said about communism due to Project Mockingbird, if true, this is honestly so funny to me. Like, oh, they learned what communism was and it started to look good to them, so clearly they were brainwashed. But it's also totally possible that this entire story was fabricated with the CIA's backing to support some sort of unknown agenda, right? Like, we don't know what was true that they published in newspapers at that time. What we do know is that GIs after the Korean War started confessing to crimes all over the place, like carrying out germ warfare against the communists, which is super, super illegal, and the U.S. denied, but like all these soldiers were like, no, we had to do that. Some were just like repeating communist talking points to their peers, like, actually, this doesn't sound so bad, like, you guys should hear what this is all about. And some refused to return to the U.S. at all. They were just like, it's better here, we're not going back.
Whoa.
Yeah. So on April 10th, 1953, Allen Dulles, who was, remember, the CIA guy, he was actually the first civilian director of the CIA, he became kind of fascinated with these post-war mindsets of, like, U.S. troops. So he concluded that the battle for men's minds has become in Soviet hands. We might call it, in its new form, brain warfare. I know, it's not a good name.
They're poets.
Brain warfare.
Like, they really should make, like, horror movies.
It's a pretty good horror movie name, yeah. Brain warfare.
Oh my god. It's like a trauma movie.
So, like, oh yeah, it's a trauma movie, yeah. So, like, refusing to believe that maybe just war was awful and being sent there by the U.S. made them question their country's concern with them completely, and that, like, hey, maybe some of that communism stuff wasn't sounding so bad. Dulles thought surely they just must have been exposed to unknown chemical agents and hypnosis effectively rendering them brainwashed. So this is, like, so funny to me because the idea of brainwashing, like, captivated the American public, and all these stories started popping up in newspapers about, you know, U.S. troops were being brainwashed in China, Korea, and the Soviet Union. And then Americans began to fear that they themselves had been brainwashed, and that politicians were brainwashed, and then brainwashed soldiers would infiltrate our ranks. And then books like The Manchurian Candidate.
I was just thinking of The Manchurian Candidate. I'm like The Manchurian Candidate?
Yes, it came out right after this, playing off this idea. Also, Naked Lunch.
Wait, Burroughs?
Yeah, interesting.
It's so funny because when I read so much in middle school, weirdly. I was like, yeah, I read William S. Burroughs. And I still to this day don't know what he was talking about.
You know what? I actually also read that book in junior high and don't remember it at all.
I know that he did write some books that are actually, like, narrative linear.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, I read Naked Lunch and I felt so smart.
Yeah, was it like, there was like a salesman, maybe?
I think it was maybe he did that, like, cut up technique.
Yes, yeah.
So I don't know.
Okay, well, whatever it was, we read it, damn it.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing too is that brainwashing satisfied the American public as a potential explanation for why so many people just liked communism. Because this was an ideology, remember, that they had been taught by the media was pure evil. And they had been taught instead that capitalism was, like, synonymous with freedom. So to them, to be like, why are all these people liking this evil thing? Because they truly believed communism was evil and capitalism was this amazing thing that was giving them good lives. The only possible explanation that could have satisfied that is brainwashing. Because why else would people like the thing that was bad in their heads, you know?
Yeah, I feel like people, like, in, like, the moral panics of, like, you know, like, I think of the one in the 80s where everyone thought metal music was making teenagers Satanists.
Yes. Yeah, so I feel like also, I mean, it's kind of sad because I think that people really are brainwashed in the United States into thinking capitalism is the best thing ever, into thinking we're free. It's like you know, lots of people think that we have, like, for example, the freest country, and then you look and we're like, oh, actually we're like 53rd on the freedom index or whatever. That's not a real number. We can fact check that, but we are not high on the freedom index. Or they think, like, other countries don't have freedom of speech, and you're like, that's actually pretty standard. Most other countries have freedom of speech, like, but people don't know. But I do love the idea that nobody could figure out why an ideology based off of sticking it to your asshole boss and making him share his riches with you would possibly be an easy sell to people. Like, that just kills me. They're like,
yeah,
how could anybody like this? And you're like, literally, it's just about thinking your boss is shitty and thinking you probably deserve to have as many nice things as him.
Yeah, or they're, like, teenagers being like, the way that adults live is fucked up and they're not being fair to us, and, like, this is... And they're like, they're brainwashed by Satanists who use Iron Maiden.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I just love that people are like, what could possibly be happening here?
It's not us. It could not be our society.
Right. So 3 days after Dulles gives the speech about the brainwashing, but he doesn't even call it that because he's not that cool. He calls it brain warfare. It's so bad. It's such an awkward thing to call something. So this is when he approves a project called MK Ultra, which is now infamous. It's a top secret CIA program for the covert use of biological and chemical materials. So MK Ultra's mind control experiments attempted to modify participants' behavior through electroshock therapy, hypnosis, polygraphs, radiation, and a variety of drugs, toxins, and chemicals. In the early 1950s, chemist Sidney Gottlieb convinced the CIA to spend $240,000 on LSD to see if the drug could be used to control the minds of others under the MK Ultra program. That is so much money. That's $250,000 to spend on acid.
Oh my gosh, and that's in, like, 1950s money.
Yes.
That's, like, probably like $1 million.
It's probably millions of dollars. He also tried out some other drugs in this process too. They bought, like, heroin, also things like that. So Gottlieb was nicknamed the Black Sorcerer at the CIA, developing gadgets laced with chemical toxins like swizzle sticks laced with drugs. Exploding seashells, that one was very interesting to me. Poisoned toothpaste, poisoned handkerchiefs, poisoned cigars, pretty much poisoned anything. And the CIA set up fake foundations and distributed drugs to people in prisons, hospitals, and clinics to test their effects. Some people voluntarily took part in the experiments, obviously not knowing it was the behest of the CIA, though, thinking they were just, like, experimental medical procedures. Others, though, like people in the military, were injected without their knowledge. Oh
Oh my God.
Some sources suspect an entire small village in France was dosed without their knowledge.
What the fuck?
Yeah, basically this local bakery that had existed forever, everyone who ate bread from there one day all just kind of lost their minds, and nobody could figure out why. And some people suspect it was a military MK Ultra experiment. And also there is evidence of people from the CIA traveling to and from France during that time.
Whoa, that sounds like a movie.
I know.
I mean,
that
cool
one
movie
has
idea, but bad reality.
bad reality. That one hasn't been substantiated. That's just suspected. But all of these experiments done under MK Ultra relied on a huge range of test subjects. Those who knew, those who didn't know, people who volunteered freely, people who volunteered but like under coercion, and yeah, of course, the people who had no idea they were participating at all. Victim pools ranged from mentally impaired boys at a state school to American soldiers to people in detention centers in countries like Japan and Germany and the Philippines to sexual psychopaths at state hospitals, you know, to like American prisoners, basically just the most vulnerable people you could find.
I like how they're like, the way that we will help people is by fucking with them.
Right. And all in all, at least 80 different institutions participated. And many of them, most of them, did not know they were dealing with the CIA. So even famous mob boss Whitey Bulger, you remember him? There was that movie made about him.
Wait, I feel like it's like mobster stuff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, I'm gonna get, yeah, see?
Yeah, he's like an old-timey mobster guy. He actually participated in injected LSD experiments when he was an inmate at the Atlanta prison in 1957. He'd explained the experience as 8 convicts in a panic and paranoid state, total loss of appetite, hallucinating, the room would change shape, hours of paranoia and feeling violent. We experienced horrible periods of living nightmares and even blood coming out of the walls. Guys turning into skeletons in front of me. I saw a camera change in the head of the dog. I felt like I was going insane. Because they weren't just giving them like normal levels of acid. They were pumping people with as much acid as possible to see if their brains could reach like a heightened state of consciousness where they were psychic.
Oh my God. Like, I remember when I was younger, I read this Vice magazine article where a guy was running from the cops and he took like a Bible of acid and tripped for a year, and it freaked me out so bad. I was like, it put me off. It made me, I was like,
Yeah. Well, that's interesting you say that about tripping for a year because, okay, so sometimes the agency would slip LSD into the drinks of fellow CIA employees without their knowledge.
No!
Yeah, and this one guy, Frank Olson, he had been considering leaving the CIA altogether. He was one of the first scientists assigned to the secret U.S. biological warfare laboratories at Fort Detrick in Frederick, Maryland during the Second World War, and he ended up working alongside ex-Nazi scientists who'd been brought over during Project Paperclip. A few years later, he joined the CIA, and his specialty was the airborne distribution of biological germs, and he developed a range of lethal aerosols in handy-sized containers disguised as shaving cream or insect repellent. But experiments under MK Ultra involved him regularly gassing and poisoning lab animals, and the experiences disturbed him. Like, he was good at what he did, and he liked the stability of the job, but his family was just like, he was not the man for that job, basically. So his son Eric later said he'd come to work in the morning and see piles of dead monkeys, and that messes with you. He also saw human detainees interrogated to death in experimental methods combining drugs, hypnosis, and torture to attempt to master brainwashing techniques and memory erasing, like regularly. He'd see this happen a lot. And Gottlieb, the guy who kind of took the helm of MK Ultra, eventually, he secretly drugged Olson and a few other colleagues with large levels of LSD at these, like, regular meetups they would have at, like, a cabin in the woods to, like, review all their info. But it was a lot of LSD. And a week later, Olson was still, like, high. He was still disoriented. And he eventually had been convinced to pursue voluntary hospitalization. Like, they tried to take him to, like, the MK Ultra doctor, and the MK Ultra doctor was like, I don't know what's going on. He already had been feeling really, really bad about his work, so, like, the acid trip just, like, really fucked with the feelings he already had. So when his colleagues were like, hey, maybe you need to go to the hospital, he was like, you're right, I think I need to go to the hospital. He said that he was looking forward to it. He's like, that's going to be good. However, the same night he agreed to hospitalization, he was staying in a hotel room in, I think, New York City. And that night, he either wandered out the window or jumped out of the window of his hotel room to his death.
Oh, I feel like that's like a famous story.
It is. And the CIA also knew that if people saw this was happening, it would just be a bad look for them, right? So in 1957, the CIA's Inspector General said, precautions must be taken not only to protect operations from exposure to enemy forces, but also to conceal these activities from the American public in general. The knowledge that the agency is engaging in unethical and illicit activities would have serious repercussions in political and diplomatic circles and would be detrimental to the accomplishment of its mission. So along with kind of like MK Ultra, there'd be like smaller projects they would do underneath that like kind of umbrella. And one of them was in 1955, and this was called Operation Midnight Climax.
That sounds like a John Waters movie to me.
Well, it kind of is a John Waters movie. I mean, really.
Like, what are these names?
Okay, so this one's kind of exactly what it sounds like. So basically, in 1955, at 225 Chestnut Street in the Telegraph Hill neighborhood of San Francisco, California, the CIA redecorated a bedroom to have pictures of French can-can dancers on the walls and flowers and red curtains over the windows and framed Toulouse-Lautrec posters. And it was supposed to be like this bohemian trap. And they finished it off with bugging equipment and a two-way mirror installed by a Berkeley engineering student. So George White, who headed up this project for the CIA, would sit behind the two-way mirror and watch as sex workers that the CIA hired brought clients into the room, where they would dose them with LSD so they could be observed by the CIA on the other side of like the two-way mirror or whatever. The sex workers received cash in exchange for assisting, as well as protection from the CIA in case they ever ran into trouble with the law in the future. Perhaps not shockingly, the CIA got really into working with the sex workers.
These people are like, I love my job.
Yeah. And soon the San Francisco house was called the Carnal Operation, the CIA Carnal Operation.
Oh, God.
So CIA operatives wanted to recruit and train sex workers, as well as observe them engaging in sexual activity with potential sources to see if they could elicit classified information. And this is where they concluded, like I mentioned earlier, that immediately after sex, yeah, some people actually did just divulge information.
See, James Bond is bad at his job.
Yes. And this is kind of what we think of as the honeypot scenario in Spy World. It's undeniable, though, that there was just like a voyeuristic creeper element to George White's interest in this, too. He once said it was fun. And the CIA agents all admitted to being fascinated with what they called the kinky sex games that the sex workers would do with their clients as they watched. And of the CIA program in general, like just being in the CIA, George White said, "Where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill, cheat, steal, rape, and pillage with the sanction and blessing of the All-Highest?" Yeah.
That's like that's the vibe that I've gotten. Like, it's like, whoa, this is just like a horde.
Yeah. It's just like people with complete control to do whatever the fuck they want with really like weird amorphous objectives.
And there's no accountability whatsoever.
No accountability. So like around the same time from 1950s-ish to 1961, there was also, this is kind of a funnier one that I found, Project 1974. And this is when a team of engineers was tasked with building a disc-shaped airborne vehicle that could travel at supersonic speeds. So what's that sound like?
Sounds like a UFO.
Yeah, a flying saucer.
There was like this book that I was like kind of reading on audiobook that like talked a lot about how like the CIA wanted to make it look like there were UFOs.
Yeah, well, they wanted this aircraft to reach a speed of Mach 4, which is 4 times the speed of sound, and an altitude of 100,000 feet. And this cost was $3 million at the time, which would be more than $26 million in today's money.
Of course.
And, the plan was scrapped in 1961 because they tested it. They built these and they tested them. But they showed that the flying saucer design was just aerodynamically unstable. Oh. And this was taken up mostly by the Air Force, not the CIA, but the CIA did acknowledge that they were aware of all these programs, including Area 51, which they confirmed was used as a test site to test a variety of these new spy planes that they were working on with the Air Force. So basically, all of those flying saucer sightings that happened in the 1950s,
CIA.
Probably CIA and Air Force plans to make their own flying saucers.
It's so disappointing that flying saucers are not aerodynamically sound.
I know, because they'd be so cute, right?
'Cause they're cute.
They're cute.
But maybe we can make, like, cuter aircraft?
Yeah, we could probably make cuter
Not
ones.
that that's very important, but if you're gonna, like...
It could be cute.
It could be cute.
Like a Hello Kitty aircraft.
Oh my god.
But not to do war. Not to do war. Not a Hello Kitty warcraft.
No, for fun stuff.
So basically, the CIA is out around 1960. It's now. This is what we're up to. They've, made everyone do acid. They've built flying saucers.
Destabilized governments.
Just sold a lot of heroin. Just like so much heroin everywhere. And now that brings us to the Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, so from 1952 to 1959, Cuba was led by American-backed dictator General Fulgencio Batista. So Batista was corrupt and oppressive to the Cuban people, but he was pro-America and an ally to U.S. companies. American corporations and the American rich owned almost half of Cuba's sugar plantations at the time, and the majority of Cuban cattle ranches, mines, and utilities when he was in office, which is the way the U.S. liked it, so they loved him. In 1959, though, a young communist revolutionary, Fidel Castro, amassed a guerrilla army of Cubans and drove to Havana to overthrow the dictator. Castro, a communist, believed it was time for Cubans to be in control of their own nation, using the slogan, Cuba sí, Yankees no. And Castro was famously successful and almost immediately limited American influence on the island. He nationalized American-dominated industries like sugar and mining. He introduced land reforms and called on other Latin American governments to take control of their own countries as well, pushing back against American imperial influence throughout the region. So obviously, the U.S. did not like this.
Yeah.
Right. Batista had been their guy, and Fidel Castro was very much there for the people of Cuba. Not to mention he was a communist, and we know the CIA's whole thing is stopping communism, right?
Their big thing.
That's their thing. That's their whole thing. So this led to the U.S. State Department and the CIA spending years trying to figure out how to get rid of Castro. So in 1960, Castro established diplomatic relations with the Soviet Union, and the U.S. retaliated by prohibiting Cuban sugar from entering the country. This was major, since sugar exports to the U.S. comprised 80% of Cuba's total sugar sales. So to alleviate Cuba's economic burden, the USSR agreed to buy the sugar instead. Well, this just pissed off the United States even more. So in January of 1961, they severed diplomatic ties to Cuba completely. While the State Department and other advisors to the U.S. president, who was JFK at the time, maintained that Castro posed no real threat to the U.S. and just wanted to lead his own country, JFK thought that letting Cuba get away with just doing communism in their own backyard would somehow be a win to the USSR and the Soviets and China, and even the Americans at home who had growing pro-communist sentiments. So he decided that Castro had to be squashed in order to basically save face for capitalism abroad. So the U.S. didn't want to just send in American troops because that would be too obvious and it might take the Cold War into actual war status. So instead they devised a secret plan. And like most CIA secret plans, it did not go well. So on April 17th, 1961, the CIA launched what it thought would be the ultimate blow, a full-scale invasion of Cuba by 1,400 American-trained Cuban fighters who had left Cuba when Castro took over and were sympathetic to the Americans' goals. However, the 1,400 fighters who benefited from capitalism when the last guy was in charge and were kind of sad that all their shit was getting taken away, they were badly outnumbered by people fighting in support of Castro, and they were forced to surrender in less than 1 day.
Wow, it seems like that makes sense.
Yeah. So Kennedy later said that the CIA had promised the plan would be both clandestine and successful. However, the plan was too large to be clandestine and too small to be successful. The failed effort came to be known as the Bay of Pigs invasion, and it was honestly a humiliating defeat for the CIA. So following this, from 1961 to 1964, the CIA tried something else instead, and this was called Operation Mongoose. Yeah, the names, I know. So following the humiliating defeat of the CIA at the Bay of Pigs, the US and the CIA embarked on a new program called Operation Mongoose, designed to pick up where the Bay of Pigs had failed. CIA Director Allen Dulles initiated talks with two leading mafia figures, because we just love dealing with mobs, apparently, Johnny Rosselli, and Sam Giancana, and later involved crime bosses Carlos Marcello, Santos Traficante, and Meyer Langsy, all in a plot against Fidel Castro.
Well, if you think about it, like, the mafia is kind of the ultimate form of capitalism.
They kind of are, right?
Yeah.
They're like anarcho-capitalists.
Oh my god, wow,
mafia's
galaxy
anarcho-capitalist.
brain.
But General Edward Lansdale was put in charge of the operation. And CIA JM Wave Station is what it was called in Miami, became the operational headquarters. This also, though, included Sidney Gottlieb. Remember the MK Ultra guy who dosed his colleague?
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, this guy. He was asked to come up with proposals for what would undermine Castro's popularity with the Cuban people. So obviously the CIA was like totally obsessed with Fidel Castro, and they wanted to do all sorts of things to him. Obviously they wanted to assassinate him or remove him from power, but since they couldn't do that very well, Gottlieb came up with plans to do things like make his beard hair fall out. This is where this comes in. Yeah. They thought it would be so embarrassing to him that it would weaken his status as a leader. So they tried to sprinkle thallium, which is a toxic chemical element that can cause symptoms like seizures, headaches, abdominal pain, and yes, hair loss, into his shoes during an overseas trip. So it would be absorbed through his skin and make his beard hair fall out.
They also left oversized condoms in his luggage.
So the idea was, once his glorious beard fell out, this was surely the source of power for the entire communist regime, and then that would fall apart too. Without the beard, no communism, I guess.
Yeah.
Communism is when beard.
All the communists have beards.
Yeah.
We can't don't check that. Don't double check that.
Well, the plot did not work out, though, because Castro had canceled his trip. He didn't end up going. So another idea Gottlieb came up with was a plan to spray a television studio with a hallucinogenic drug prior to Castro's appearance there.
What the fuck?
To just make him trip. But I'm like, everyone would trip in the room, not just him. Like, the reporters would be tripping out. What?
Yeah, like,
Okay, so one other operation suggested by a different operative was called Operation Good Time. And this was just circulating fake photographs of Castro, but like fatter and sitting in a lavish room to make Cubans think he was misappropriating resources.
Okay.
Other operations involved spreading fake rumors about freedom fighters that didn't exist, resisting Castro in Cuba, which all the Cubans were pretty happy with Castro, so that didn't really work. Unless they were like the sugar plantation people. They were the only Cubans who weren't happy because they were the capitalists who got all their land taken away. But yeah, in perhaps the funniest attempt, the CIA sent Marita Lorenz, who was Castro's former lover, to kill him. Instead, though, she just had sex with him.
They love you. They love, like, they're like, yeah, sex.
Yeah, they love it. They're horny boys. Yeah. They're just horny boys sitting in a room. Like, can we take drugs and have someone fuck? So the CIA trained her for what they called Operation 40 in Miami, then sent her on a plane to Havana with 2 botulism toxin pills that looked like white gelatin capsules, which could kill him in 30 seconds, along with what she called the guts pill that she'd been ordered to swallow before leaving. She said, it's some kind of shit the CIA gives you that makes you feel very strong, courageous, and different, like speed.
Oh, so they gave you speed.
Yeah. This chick's pretty funny to me, honestly. So on March 12th, 1961, the CIA met with those mob bosses. Oh, actually, I'm going to jump back to her. Sorry, I skipped something about Marita. I'm like, wait, what happened to Marita? No, so when Marita got to Cuba, she realized that she'd ruined the pills they gave her by stashing them in her cold cream. They just, like, fell apart. And then Castro asked her point blank, did you come here to kill me? And she replied, well, yeah, but because I wanted to see you.
Wow, toxic relationship.
And he just goes, that's good. Then he leans over, pulls out his .45 and just hands it to her and says, you can't kill me. Nobody can kill me. And then they just had sex, which I get because that's pretty hot.
Wow. Yeah. Woo.
Very hot energy. Anyway, okay, so Marita didn't work, basically, and then that brings us to the thing I started on a few seconds ago, which was on March 12th, 1961, the CIA instead met with those mob bosses we mentioned earlier at a hotel, because they were like, all right, the hot chick failed. We got to bring in the mob dudes. So at the meeting, a CIA operative gave one of these mob dudes, Johnny Rosselli, more poison pills and $10,000 to be used against Castro to ostensibly devise a plan to kill him. Rosselli didn't really care about Castro, though, and also figured, like, removing Castro wouldn't actually have much of an effect on Cuba anyway, since the citizens were so passionate about, like, the movement. But he saw it as an opportunity to blackmail the CIA to avoid being charged for crimes back home in the U.S.
Smart.
So he took the poison pills and the money, and he just set up a huge trail of breadcrumbs trying to make it as obvious as possible what was happening. Like, he handed off the pills and money to a young Cuban man in an obvious place, a club called the Boom Boom Room, and was like, use them to kill Castro. I'm from the government of the United States, you know? Just very, like,
Don't
obvious.
tell anyone!
Yeah. And obviously the young man just took the pills and money and did not attempt any assassination effort of any kind. So that failed. Castro wasn't stupid. You know, he knew the U.S. was trying to kill him. And he would complain about how tedious the assassination attempts were. Like, he was just annoyed by them. And one CIA operative alone had been tasked 3 different times to try to kill Castro. Castro himself could count 20 different attempts. So eventually the Soviet Union sent Castro 40,000 soldiers, 1,300 field pieces, 700 anti-aircraft guns, 350 tanks, 150 jets, and nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles to just really drive the point home that the U.S. was not taking this guy out.
Wow. I'm just imagining, I'm like, at one point, they got a goldfish with a gun.
Yeah, well, we actually get to that later. It's not quite a goldfish. We'll get there.
Jeez.
So now the CIA is like, okay, we can't kill him, right? So it's 1962, and they come up with this new plan called Operation Northwoods. And they're like, what if instead of killing him, we just try to make people hate him, right? So what they do is they come up with this plan, which is actually really fucked up. And another one of those things like Project Mockingbird, Operation Mockingbird, about all the propaganda. This is another one of those things that will make you rethink everything you've experienced, right? They concoct this plan to commit real acts of violence against both U.S. and Cuban civilians and blame those acts on the Cuban government. So the acts of violence proposed hijacking planes and sinking boats of Cuban immigrants en route to the U.S., as well as faked terrorist attacks in U.S. cities, all of which could be used to justify going to war with Cuba. Proposed cities included Miami and Washington, D.C.
Whoa.
So I'm not a person who thinks 9/11 was an inside job, but it's impossible to hear this information and...
Well, I think this is why there are so many conspiracy theories, because there's just shit that's gone down in the past that seems unbelievable. That seems like a movie.
Right, but it was a real thing that they considered doing.
And people, I mean, not to get like, but that people wonder why people don't trust the government.
Right, and it's like, how could you when you know all of this stuff? I'm also realizing this is a really long episode, and I'm sorry, but once I stared digging into all this, it was just so interesting. So I'm very
really
sorry.
Juicy.
This is like the longest episode we've had. Yeah, so none of the Castro stuff worked, but then they were like still also trying to fight the Soviets at the same time, just like the communists everywhere, you know? So this other kind of fun thing they did in the early 1960s is they kidnapped the Lunik. Do you know what the Lunik is?
What?
It's a satellite.
Huh?
They kidnapped a
How
satellite.
do you kidnap a satellite?
Yeah.
This sounds like a really bad, like, James Bond, Austin Powers situation.
I feel like any one of these situations, any one of these projects could be a full movie. So in the early 1960s, at the height of the U.S.-Soviet space race, the Soviets launched a multinational exhibition of their new Lunik satellite, which was the first spacecraft to reach the vicinity of Earth's moon. But one night, undercover CIA agents convinced the truck driver who transported the satellite from city to city to just get some rest in a nearby hotel and maybe just to let us take care of the satellite for a little bit. And then they just borrowed it, took it apart completely, photographed every component, then put it back together and put it on the truck.
Whoa.
And the Soviets never knew this happened.
Whoa.
Yeah, nobody knew until the documents were declassified.
I wonder if, like, I hope the truck driver got, like, some money.
I think he did. I imagine he got paid.
Cool.
With drug money. From heroin trading. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, because sometimes you're like, yeah, like, get that money, and then you're like, wait,
where's this money coming from? Who's expense?
Then you just go down the rabbit hole of like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Okay. Well, this next section of weird shit the CIA did, I think this will really speak to you because this is really where they started involving animals.
Oh no.
But like in fun ways.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So in 1967, they launched an operation called Project Acoustic Kitty.
Oh, no.
So the CIA, they tried out this really funny thing with cats. So basically, they surgically implanted microphones inside of them to secretly record the conversations of anyone that came near the cats. So to do this, they did a little 1-hour kitty surgery, a little 1-hour operation. They put transmitters and microphones inside of the cat's skull and ear canal.
Oh, no.
It was only an hour, though. You know, they were out. They came to. They were fine.
Oh, poor kitties.
Well, they expected the cats would get close to people and hear their conversations. What actually happened is that in 1967, one of the cats just bolted out of the reconnaissance van on its first time out, and it got hit by a taxi.
Oh, no.
I know, it's really sad, but like R.I.P. Kitty, because you were the ultimate conscientious objector. So gone but not forgotten. They scrapped the whole program after that.
Oh.
I know. So then also, if the cats didn't work, they moved on to these other projects in 1967 called Projects Oxygas and Chirology, maybe?
That sounds like a drug from the 90s.
Yes. It is dolphins, though. It is just dolphins. These are the 2 dolphin projects. Yeah, so in these projects, dolphins were targeted for use in harbor penetration.
Oh.
Yeah. And
that doesn't sound good.
No. A team in Key West, Florida tried to use dolphins for underwater attacks against enemy shipping. There were also tests on whether dolphins could carry sensors to collect the sounds of Soviet nuclear submarines or look for radioactive or biological weapon traces from nearby facilities. They also looked at whether they could train dolphins to retrieve or place packages on ships on the move. I also read that they, tried to see if they could get the dolphins to just drop off bombs somehow underwater.
Wow.
Yeah. And then there was another CIA animal project in 1967 called Project Axiolite. And this was their bird one.
Oh, it sounded like a drink that makes you hydrated.
I thought it sounded like Axe body spray.
That too.
Yeah.
If Axe made like a Gatorade.
Oh, an Axe energy drink? I think I would drink that.
Dude, I would.
I would totally drink that. It'd have like a really good name too.
Axe, we're giving you this idea for free.
Yeah, Axe. You can just have it. Just do it. Just send us some. Sponsor us. So the CIA trained a bunch of birds to try to do a bunch of shit, basically. They trained a raven to deliver and retrieve small objects from the windowsill of inaccessible buildings. A flashing red laser beam was used to mark the target, and a special lamp would draw the bird back. On one occasion in Europe, the CIA secretly delivered an eavesdropping device by a bird to a window, although no audio was picked up. The CIA also looked into migratory birds to see if they could place sensors on them to detect whether the Soviet Union had used chemical weapons. One file details training where they used a Canadian falcon out on a boat. And they had tried to use a cockatoo before, and they were like, this didn't work. And then they were just like, we are completely in the dark as to what the possibilities are in regard to this critter, is one of the CIA things. There was also this project with birds where I guess one bird in particular ended up being really good at spy missions. Not like one breed of bird, like one bird. And they were like, this is our bird.
The bird found its calling?
Yeah, it found its calling, and it was just spy bird. But something happened to it, and they're like, where'd our bird go? And then they were really sad. So that was a sad one.
No.
Spy bird, something tragic must have happened. We don't know. So then in the 1970s, they were like, let's amp this bird shit up, and let's just go to pigeons. So the pigeons had their own project called Project Takana, and they would just strap $2,000 cameras onto the pigeons and then send them flying over what they called high-value Soviet targets to take pictures. And actually, everyone was like, these pictures are way better than what a spy plane could capture.
I love pigeons.
Yeah, I do too. Well, they're very good spy birds, and they did the best job out of all the animals.
Dude, I want to get a pigeon. Not for spy. No, I'm not to spy.
Yeah, I was talking about this earlier to my best friend, but you and I are definitely bird people.
Yeah, I like birds.
Yeah, we like birds. We're doing birds. Okay, so another thing they did, which has a bird-like name, but actually is just back onto the fighting communism thing. This was between 1968 and 1972, and this is called Project Phoenix. So in 1967, actually around the same time that the U.S. is trying to train all these animals to spy on communists, the U.S.-backed South Vietnam announced a plan to fight the communist North Vietnam under a new program. which they called Fuang Huang, which is named after a mythical bird. So the U.S. allies, right, because the U.S. and the South Vietnam were fighting together in the name of capitalism, they were like, okay, we're going to name our project after a mythical bird too. We're going to call it Project Phoenix. So these were the two like joint anti-communist fighting efforts in Vietnam. But Project Phoenix was actually really controversial. So the CIA backed the project, and they used paramilitary teams to target undercover communist operatives in villages in South Vietnam. And witnesses regularly saw these CIA teams carry out torture, murder, and assassinations. Yeah, and the program also sought to collect intelligence just from average villagers and compile detailed information on every hamlet and village in which the program operated. And this information was often used to pressure families and communities to comply with directives. So what we really see here is like in these places where the CIA is fighting communism, right? They're just like terrorizing these people. Then also, this is like back stateside in 1970, from 1970 to 1974, they had this project called Project Azorian. Do you remember Howard Hughes?
Yeah, the airplane guy.
Yeah, he's like an airplane guy. He's like a rich, eccentric...
Oh, wait, he was the guy... Oh, yeah, Howard Hughes. He was an airplane guy. He owned all the newspapers. And then he became, like, a recluse.
Yeah, and there was that movie about him. Aviator?
No. Well, The Aviator, but also supposedly... the Rosebud. The movie. Citizen Kane.
Oh, yeah. So, okay. Basically, the thing that, like, the U.S. had on their side is that all of the rich people wanted to uphold capitalism. So all these rich people wanted to help the U.S. fight communism, right? Because communism is all about, like, redistributing resources, like, workers owning the means of production, no one rich guy at top. So all the one rich guys at top in the United States were like, no, we can't have communism. What do you need, CIA? We'll do anything to help you. So this guy was one of those. He was an eccentric aviation dude. He was an engineering pioneer. And the CIA came to him and they were like, we're trying to recover this Soviet submarine that was armed with nuclear warheads that suffered mechanical failure and disappeared into the Pacific Ocean. So they're like, look, can you help us find this 2,000-ton submarine that's like 16,000 feet underwater? Because we want it. We want to know exactly what the commies are up to, and this is going to just be so much intelligence for us. And the CIA on their own had tried to solve this problem, and they just failed. They thought about using balloons to raise it out of the water, which is just one of the stupidest ideas I've ever heard in my life.
Balloons?
But, like, how many balloons do you need to lift a 2,000-ton submarine out of water?
Like 1 billion balloons. Like, would it blot out the sun?
99 Luft balloons. It's wild. So Howard Hughes is like, yeah, you guys are not doing this well, so I'll help you. So he sends in a fake vessel to search for manganese nodules in the ocean as a cover story. In reality, though, Hughes' company used the Hughes Glomar Explorer, which is a 620-foot ship, sailing out of Long Beach to recover the submarine in spring of 1974. Or half of it, anyway, because they couldn't get the whole thing. So then in 1974, Rolling Stone journalist Harriet Ann Philippi filed a Freedom of Information Act request to be like, did you do this? And the CIA replied with this now famous line that they could neither confirm nor deny the operation. And now we call that phrase the Glomar response.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Huh.
Interesting. So they always did dream of going back for the second half, but then Project Azorian was finally exposed in 1975 by an LA Times report, and all future recovery efforts were just canceled. Okay, so then around the same time, we're in the 70s now, right? In 1972, between then and 1979, there was this other kind of trippy experiment going on. It was called Project Stargate. So this kind of picked up where MK Ultra left off. So the CIA had this obsession with something it called psychoenergetics, which was just a word used to describe any sort of like metaphysical, paranormal stuff they were interested in. And a lot of this interest was stemmed from a 1972 report that the Soviet Union was funding projects on ESP and psychokinesis for use in espionage. So in response, the CIA began its own similar research out of Stanford in Menlo Park, California. So in 1972, the research team invited Uri Geller. Do you know who that is?
Mm-mm.
He was like this former Israeli paratrooper, but he'd become famous worldwide for like bending spoons with his mind.
Huh.
Yeah. So he had these supposed psychic powers, and the CIA was like, why don't you come to Menlo Park and we're going to test them? So, Geller went and he was like, yeah, you want to see me bend spoons and forks? And the CIA is like, no. We want to know if you can read other people's minds and if you can control them.
Okay.
Yes. So in 1975, Geller participated in a series of classified psychokinesis tests at a lab in Livermore, California, where scientists were developing advanced nuclear warheads, laser systems, and other emerging weapons technologies. One of the psychoenergetics they were interested in particular, was remote viewing. Have you heard of this?
Yes, I have.
Do you want to explain what it is?
I believe remote viewing is like you sit down with like a piece of paper and you like basically are like, someone's like, okay, where is the person in this room, in this building? And they like think about it and then they draw it out on like a piece of paper.
Yes, so this is similar to our introductory experiment with brain reading, mind reading.
I am psychic, okay?
I think you're psychic. I think you can do it. So yeah, remote viewing is exactly what you said. People could see potentially what was happening somewhere else in the world, just in their own mind. And the CIA found psychics and attempted to tap them into this whole remote viewing thing, using them in operations in order to locate kidnapped hostages and trace paths of fugitives. And when Project Stargate closed down, the CIA program transferred over to the military and continued well into the 90s. One Army veteran who seemed to perform the best at remote viewing was Joseph McMoneagle, who helped out in missions from 1978 to 1984. McMoneagle still worked closely in conjunction with the CIA, helping them find a shortwave radio concealed in the pocket calculator of a suspected KGB agent in South Africa. Another remote viewer, Angela Delafiore Ford, was asked in 1989 to help track down a rogue customs agent. She told officials he was in a town called Lowell, Wyoming. And the man was apprehended 100 miles west of a town in Wyoming called Lovell. So same spelling, but a V instead of a W. So could be kind of similar.
I feel like, it's like if you have 1,000 guesses, one is probably right.
Right. Also, I'm like, okay, if you just find him and then you just look for anything similar close, within 100 miles, there's a town kind of close.
Yeah, it's kind of like, on the daytime TV shows, like they'd have the psychic on, they'd be like, is there someone with an M name in your life? And you're like, yeah, I think that's the most commonly.
Is it Mom?
Oh, my mom. Oh, yeah, it's just like,
Yeah, no, for sure. I kind of, I'm like, oh, okay, Angela, you did your best. Well, nobody knows for sure. It's estimated that the U.S. government spent around $20 million trying to figure out if people could, do telekinesis against communism. And shockingly, they were never able to find concrete evidence that remote viewing or telekinesis was actually real.
Wow. And just, I'm so surprised in all the many years of human history that they didn't find out that it was real.
Shocking, right? And in 1995, the CIA released a report about Project Stargate, calling it a failure and saying it remains unclear whether the existence of paranormal phenomenon remote viewing has been demonstrated. Although analysts did say that some trials had been successful at showing something beyond the odd statistical hiccup.
Ooh, that is interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah, where it's like, maybe we got a little something special.
Maybe. There's a little something, maybe. So around the same time, the CIA in the United States is trying to make psychics fight communism with their brains. There's something interesting happening in Australia, too. So this is 1973 to 1980. And basically, what's happening here is that in 1973, Frank Nugan, an Australian lawyer, and Michael Hand, a former CIA contract operative, they established a bank in Australia called the Nugan Hand Bank. And another key figure in this venture was Bernie Houghton, who was closely connected to CIA officials Ted Shackley and Thomas G. Klein. So Nugan ran operations in Sydney, where Hand established a branch in Hong Kong, and this enabled Australian depositors to access a money laundering facility for illegal transfers of Australian money to Hong Kong. So according to Alfred W. McCoy, the Hand-Houghton partnership led the bank's international division into new fields: drug finance, arms trading, and support work for CIA covert operations. So Hand told friends it was his ambition that the Nugan Hand Bank became banker for the CIA. In 1974, the Nugan Hand Bank became involved in helping the CIA take part in covert arms deals in Angola, and by 1976, the bank appeared to be just a CIA-fronted company with appointees all linked to the CIA in leadership positions. Soon the bank expanded, with branches in Saudi Arabia, Europe, Southeast Asia, South America, and the US. However, the bank was also tied to criminal activity from like every single angle, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and international arms dealings. In 1980, amid several mysterious deaths from everybody who worked at the bank collapsed $50 million in debt.
Wow.
So that's, the CIA, they tried to do mind control, and then they tried to start a bank.
Okay.
To traffic drugs.
They sound very chaotic.
They're a very chaotic, agency. I don't understand what's going on over here. So basically, we just see this image that they're gallivanting all over the world, trying things out, and them ending in failure, basically. And then it just all ends with them selling drugs. Every single scenario, they go to someplace in the world, they try to fight communism, everything falls apart, and then they just sell drugs. So basically, in the 1970s and 1980s, they did the same thing in Panama. So in the early 70s, the CIA was paying Manuel Noriega for intelligence and collaboration in Panama as part of their effort to stop the spread of communism in Central America, because obviously they're obsessed with that. So Noriega was born less than 1 mile from the U.S.-controlled Panama Canal Zone and joined the military in his youth, where he demonstrated skill at psychological warfare campaigns.
Oh, God.
So obviously the CIA loved him. So Noriega worked under Omar Torrijos, who went on to seize power in 1968 in a military coup and appointed Noriega as head of military intelligence. And this whole time, Noriega was off and on the CIA payroll. Noriega orchestrated the disappearance of scores of opponents, some of whose bodies later turned up in exhumations at the former Tocumen military base, bound and showing signs of torture. So Noriega is a real fun guy. So he worked closely with the CIA in the U.S., allowing U.S. forces to set up listening posts in Panama and funnel aid to anti-communist pro-American forces in El Salvador and Nicaragua. Noriega eventually became the Panamanian leader when Torrijos died in an air crash. But by this point, he was helping Colombian drug lords like Pablo Escobar smuggle cocaine into the U.S. and launder bales of drug cash through Panama's banks, receiving millions of dollars in kickbacks. And between 1970 and 1987, Noriega appeared in at least 80 different U.S. DEA, which is the Drug Enforcement Administration, files. However, U.S. officials, including then CIA Director William Webster and several DEA officers, sent Noriega letters of praise for his efforts in thwarting drug trafficking against his competitors.
Wow.
Yeah.
Side note, funny story. I believe Noriega was in the prison in my hometown.
What? Really? Whoa.
I cannot confirm this, but I remember people talking about it when I was a kid.
Neither confirm nor deny.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
The Glomar response. I love it. So the CIA obviously was fine with all of this, but they denounced Noriega after they figured out that he was also selling intelligence to the Cuban communists and the Nicaraguan socialist Sandinistas about the U.S.
Oh, they're like, too far.
Yeah, too far. They're like, you can do your drugs, but you're selling info about us, you're double-crossing us. So after the U.S. invaded Panama, drug trafficking actually increased even more in the region. So the CIA came in, they were like, nuh-uh, invaded Panama, more drugs happened. And also, okay, so this is the 70s and 80s. We're up to the 80s. We're doing pretty well. We're almost done, I swear. But did you ever see the movie Argo?
No, it sounds familiar.
Okay, so this is this movie that came out in the 2010s era, maybe. Ben Affleck was in it and maybe directed it.
Oh, is this about the Iranian hostage crisis?
Yes, it was. And that is a movie about a real CIA operation, which happened between 1979 and 1980. And it is the Argo operation. So basically, a revolution was happening in Iran, and we call it the Iran hostage crisis, which followed. And 6 U.S. embassy staff members were trapped in the country. Revolutionaries were looking for Americans, so these 6 Americans were hiding in the house of a Canadian diplomat. So to get them out of the country, the CIA pretended to make a science fiction film called Lord of Light, and then CIA agent Tony Mendez was like, that's a terrible name, and then he renamed it Argo. Yeah, so the agency used a real script and even had comic legend Jack Kirby illustrate the concept art for it to make the whole thing seem legitimate. And they went in and they were like, yeah, we're location scouting for our science fiction movie. And when they did that, they just picked up the 6 embassy people and added them to their crew, and they all left together as one film crew from Hollywood.
Whoa.
And it worked. And when you watch the Argo the movie, they make it look like they almost got caught, but when they interview Tony Mendez later, he's like, no, they just added that to make it interesting. Actually, it worked super, super well, and nobody suspected a thing.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty interesting. So then also, that was a successful thing. On the flip side, flipping back to just ridiculous things, in the 1980s, there were these plots to confuse the KGB with sex dolls.
Oh, God. The CIA is horny.
The CIA is so horny. This one's pretty funny, though. The idea was simple. So, like, let's say you're a spy, and you're doing your spy thing in the USSR, and, oh no, someone's onto you, and you're in your car, and you're driving, and you're like, I need to make an escape. So you turn the corner, and then you just pull out of your car some nondescript container, say a fake birthday cake, and you open it up, and boom, an inflatable sex doll is inside. You just blow that baby up, stick it in the car in your place, and make an escape. This was real. The fake birthday cake and everything concealed them, and they called them Jack-in-the-Box dolls, or JIB, and apparently they were pretty successful.
I've heard of that, you know, like I feel like there was like some 80s movie where someone used a blow-up doll so they could go in the HOV lane.
Yes. Yeah, so, okay, as the things with the Soviet Union start coming to a halt, the CIA needs some new enemies, right? Where can they fight communism now? China, the communist one. Vietnam, the communist one. The USSR, reverting back to like this free market capitalism. It's not really communism anymore. Cuba, they seem pretty happy with what's going on in Cuba. Where can they go to fight communism and sell drugs? And the answer is Nicaragua.
I was gonna guess, like, is it the Contra thing?
It's the Contra thing. So in the 1980s and 1990s, basically Nicaragua had been under dictatorial leadership of a U.S.-backed Somoza family. They were like sympathetic to the United States for 46 years. And this was around 1979 when the 46 year came to a mark. And the Somoza family was worth $500 million, which is like huge in the scale of the Nicaraguan economy. And they owned or controlled 50% of Nicaragua's land.
Wow.
Yeah, so understandably, the Nicaraguan people weren't very happy with the arrangement, right? You've got these rich people here, they're in charge of everything, they're using up all the land, and they just do everything this other country wants, the United States. So the then president, Anastasio Somoza Debayle, was vehemently anti-communist, like most rich people are. And he had even assisted the U.S. in their Bay of Pigs operation in Cuba, the one that the CIA botched miserably.
Wow, yeah. Coming full circle.
So the socialist Sandinistas in Nicaragua, however, they were starting to fight for power. And they eventually gained so much power that they were able to take over and end the Somoza family rule. So then the Sandinistas were governing Nicaragua on their own from 1979 to 1990. And they were members of the Sandinista National Liberation Front, or the SNLF, and they were a revolutionary group of organized students, workers, and peasants committed to socialism. The Sandinistas confiscated the Somoza family land and nationalized the country's major industries, but still allowed for small and medium-sized private farms and businesses, so kind of a mixed socialist economy. Through the 80s and 90s, though, the left-wing Marxist Sandinistas were fought by various CIA-backed and funded right-wing rebel groups called the Contras, which was just any name kind of given to a counter-revolutionary group at the time, in a continuation of the old Cold War-era practice of stopping the spread of communism. And a lot of these Contras made their money selling drugs. One article alone said the CIA worked with about 24 Nicaraguan rebel groups throughout the 80s as they trafficked drugs. While not officially declassified, reports have circulated that throughout the 80s and 90s, the CIA worked in many different capacities with drug traders, specifically in Nicaragua. In 1996, a controversial news story was published in the San Jose Mercury News, which alleged that the CIA-trained Contras were smuggling crack into the U.S. with the CIA's knowledge. The Mercury News published a 3-part series in late August that detailed how a San Francisco Bay Area drug ring sold tons of cocaine to street gangs of South Central Los Angeles in the 1980s, sending home millions in profits to the Contras who were working with the CIA there. This was major because the crack epidemic was specifically targeting and harming Black communities in the U.S., which begged the question, were Black Americans acceptable casualties of war to fight communists in Nicaragua? Many major newspapers like the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, and Washington Post ran stories almost immediately questioning the validity of the report. But again, with Operation Mockingbird, who knows what their motivations might have been for publishing those stories, if those were even factual rebuttals. We can't trust anything, especially knowing that all 3 of those publications were previously on the Project Mockingbird list of like CIA-approved speaking posts, basically. The reality is that as early as 1985, the Associated Press had been running similar articles saying similar things about the CIA, Nicaraguan Contras, and drugs. After interviewing the DEA, Customs, and FBI officials, the AP article said that there was evidence the Contras were importing drugs into the U.S. to support their war effort against the Sandinistas with CIA knowledge. And that was over 10 years prior to the San Jose Mercury News article. In 1987, there was a Senate investigation into this led by John Kerry. You remember John Kerry?
Oh, yeah. He for president.
He ran for president. He's a Democrat. In which insiders admitted to selling drugs and giving the proceeds directly to the Contras. The investigation committee concluded that it's clear that individuals who provided support for Contras were involved in drug trafficking, the supply network of the Contras was used by drug trafficking organizations, and elements of the Contras themselves knowingly received financial and material assistance from drug traffickers. In each case, one or another agency of the U.S. government had information regarding the involvement. In different reports, including one about an incident in San Francisco, the CIA acknowledged that, it had contacted the U.S. Attorney General's office in San Francisco and asked once if money seized in a drug bust, the largest bust in California history at the time, could just please be returned to the defendant. The defendant was one member of the Contras, and the money, the CIA said, belonged to them. So this alone should be pretty shocking for a government agency. The CIA intervened in a drug case in the U.S. on behalf of the Contras, but knowing the history of the CIA, it's hardly salacious, right? Theorists call this the Dark Alliance, the intersection of the interests of cocaine drug trading, the anti-communist CIA, and the right-wing anti-communist trafficking Contras. So from 1990 to 1998, Frederick Hitz acted as the Inspector General of the CIA, and in 1998, the CIA released a declassified version of Hitz's 2-volume report on the situation. In this report, it stated that a cable to CIA headquarters said one Contra had decided to engage in drug smuggling to the United States in order to finance its anti-Sandinista operations. The cable stated that an initial trial run had taken place in July of 1981 when drugs were transported via plane to Miami.
Wow.
In another instance, the CIA received allegations that 5 members of the same Contra were involved in drug trafficking with famous drug runner Jorge Morales. Furthermore, the report states that in 1985, the DEA was looking into a Contra pilot who they suspected to be transporting drugs from Costa Rica to Miami. Costa Rica, right on the border of Nicaragua. He had access to Hangar 4 at an airbase in Nicaragua. When the DEA attempted to intervene to catch the drug smuggler, the CIA simply requested that they don't. And they're like, we're in Hangar 4, and we've been here, we're commissioned by the White House, we're carrying out aid to the Contras, so just don't. Don't do anything to anyone in Hangar 4. We've got it all under control here.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so all of this leads to the unproven but highly probable conclusion based on all evidence that the CIA was working with the Contras to facilitate drug trafficking into the U.S. to raise funds for their combined effort to defeat the socialist Sandinistas, all at the expense, in particular, of black communities in the U.S. who were ravaged by the crack cocaine epidemic of the 80s. According to Dennis Dale, former chief of an elite DEA enforcement unit, in my 30-year history in the Drug Enforcement Administration and related agencies, the major targets of my investigations almost invariably turned out to be working for the CIA.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so this is just all they do. They just go places where they're supposed to fight communism, and they just sell drugs and pocket cash.
Yeah, and if they were regular citizens, they would be very much in prison.
Right. So then in 1986 to 1991 in Haiti, they did the same thing, but they took it a step further. So in 1986, the CIA went to Haiti and they created an intelligence service there to fight cocaine trade. However, the unit devolved into an instrument of political terror, according to the New York Times, whose officers themselves began trafficking drugs. The organization was called the National Intelligence Service, aka SIN. After creating the agency, though, the CIA failed to ensure that several $1 million spent training and equipping the service from 1986 to 1991 was actually used in the war on drugs. They didn't know where it went. And in fact, the unit produced very little intelligence about drug trade at all. Instead, senior members of the SIN went on to interrogate, torture, and threaten anyone they began to see as political enemies, including the local chief of the DEA there. The SIN had been staffed almost solely with officers of the Haitian army, which were extremely corrupt, that was how they were viewed in the country. And the stated purpose was to stem the flow of hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cocaine through Haiti, a crucial transit point for drug traffickers. The United States would gain information on the Haitian military by creating the unit, and the Haitian military would obtain money, trading, and equipment from the CIA. So SIN received $500,000 to $1 million a year in equipment, training, and financial support from the CIA, at the same time that Congress was withholding $1.5 million in aid for the Haitian military regime, which is just weird, you know? So the CIA is able to do things that Congress can't. and contradict Congress, basically.
Yeah, because they have a blank check.
Right. It was a military organization that distributed drugs in Haiti, said one U.S. embassy official who worked in Haiti in 1991 and 1992. It never produced drug intelligence. The agency gave them money under counter narcotics, and they used their training to do other things in the political arena. That money was spent to train these guys in counter narcotics field boggled the mind. $500,000 to $1 million a year, and they were turning around and using it for political reasons against whatever group they wanted to gather information on. In September 1992, an SIN officer was arrested by Haitian authorities on cocaine charges.
Of course.
Yeah. So I wanted to include, we're almost done here, but I wanted to include one conspiracy.
Okay.
Okay, are you familiar with the conspiracy of the Finders?
No.
All right, so this was in 1987. This is not, all the other stuff I've talked about so far has either been definitely proven by declassified documents, or many, many reports on it have all kind of conferred, and it seems legit. But this one's just pure conspiracy theory, I think. So, in the midst of the moral panics about stranger danger and satanic cults in the 80s, this weird thing happened in 1987. 2 well-dressed men in suits were found in Tallahassee with 6 dirty, unkempt children in a park. Shortly after, the men, Douglas Ammerman and James Michael Holwell, were pulled over in a van with the kids in the back, and they were arrested. They were identified as members of the Finders, a secretive commune that based its teachings off of the writings of a philosopher, and they were all kind of based around the Washington, D.C. area. The men were charged with misdemeanor child abuse and held on bail, and the children were placed in state custody until they could find their mothers. 6 weeks later, though, the men were released, and in March, the charges were formally dropped. This sparked a number of conspiracy theories regarding the group, the Finders, which many speculated were involved in child sex trafficking due to the mass hysteria climate at the time where everyone thought everybody was trying to traffic children. However, a few things stood out to people as interesting beyond just the mass hysteria thing. Number 1, a trusted confidential informant in the case said that the Finders were using children in brainwashing experiments, which sounded a little too familiar to some of the CIA programs. And 2, the FBI reportedly was blocked from further investigation into it by the CIA specifically.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so given the history of MK Ultra and CIA operations like Midnight Climax that took place in San Francisco in previous decades, people were intrigued. They knew that the CIA was not shy about doing unscrupulous things to get information.
And stuff like that just totally fuels the QAnon fire.
Right. And when you look at it, you're like, well, the CIA literally tried to brainwash people.
It's so funny because, I feel like once you go down the conspiracy rabbit hole, actually what's at the bottom is not, reptilians or aliens or some other nefarious cabal. It is actually just capitalism.
Yeah, it's just that capitalism. The government doesn't care about you. The CIA doesn't give a fuck, and they're going to do everything in their power to make sure rich people in the United States stay rich.
Yeah, and that's, not a conspiracy.
No.
That's, they want, and the bureaucracy. I feel like the CIA is just pure, absurd bureaucracy. It kind of feels like Franz Kafka, The Metamorphosis,
Yes.
style. It's just absolutely absurd, and it just feels basically, to me, I feel like this is part of the book that I'm reading, but to me, it's in feudal times or whatever, there used to be a king and then lords underneath them, and there was an aristocracy. So after there wasn't an aristocracy, there was, democracy. But what do you do with all the aristocratic type of people? You put them in these bureaucratic positions within the government, so they kind of stay the same.
They have power.
And what they do is they create all these rules that are actually stupid and absurd, to basically keep the status quo.
Right. I mean, yeah, and I get how, if you have this government agency with, nobody knows what they do, nobody knows how much money they have, nobody knows where the money comes from. We know that they're fighting communism. We don't even get told what communism is, though. The newspapers are all telling us communism is something, whatever they want us to believe, so we support the CIA. The CIA is telling us what they're fighting, right? Because they're the ones putting the message in the newspaper. We know that the CIA was doing mind control experiments with LSD on boys, mentally disabled boys in state facilities. We know that. And we know the CIA was interested in brainwashing. So where is the stretch to be is the CIA abducting boys to brainwash them?
Yeah.
It's like that's, how do you tell someone that's a conspiracy theory at that point? Because you're like, well, the things that actually happened aren't that far off from that.
Yeah, and it just creates this sense of like, if we are going to have a society and a government, it creates this deep, deep sense of distrust. So you cannot trust anything or anybody.
Right. So, okay, so what follows here, none of this has been like substantiated. It remains as a conspiracy theory on the web mostly, unlike all the other things listed in this episode, which are very real. But this just is a really interesting component of CIA history, which is why I wanted to include it. So, the FBI and Metro Police led an investigation into the finder's location in D.C., where they searched 2 properties and found documents, photos, and a large amount of computer equipment, and what they called instructions for obtaining children with unspecified purposes. The instructions allegedly included information about getting female members of the commune pregnant and buying, trading, and kidnapping children. This, from everything I could find, this really did happen. They found this at the finder's headquarters. A joint investigation with the FBI's D.C. field office led to the identification and interview of the mothers of the 6 children, 2 of the fathers, and other key members of the group. They all said they were part of an alternative lifestyle, communal-type association of intellectuals who have chosen to live the way they do. That really happened too. They found the kids' moms. The kids were reunited with their moms. Their moms were like, this is ridiculous. Yes, we're part of this group. Like, we follow the teachings of this philosopher. Also, the group happened to be anti-capitalist, as they described it. They, like, advocated not owning property, living together, whatever. So, the police are like, well, they're just weirdos. It's not illegal to be a weirdo, basically, right? That all happened. And they found no evidence of child sexual exploitation, kidnapping, or any related crime, so the Metro Police dropped the case. But here's the things that I can't tell if this is 100% real or fake. Another document said a customs agent who asked to review evidence in the case was told it was a CIA internal matter by the CIA.
Weird.
So this person has not been named who said this. So this could be real, could be not, and it really fuels the conspiracy theories. And additionally fueling the conspiracy theories is the fact that newspapers reported on this, saying that there were ties to the CIA when this first happened, which newspapers can be wrong, but it did happen. The Washington Times reported early on that the finders did have ties to the CIA. And the CIA says that they sent some of their employees to a company called Future Enterprises for computer training in the 1980s, which has been linked to the finders in more ways than one. One finders member, former IRS employee Robert Garden Terrell, worked at the company Future Enterprises before he was let go in February 1987. Additionally, a police document from February 19th, 1987 quotes a CIA agent as confirming that his agency was sending people to a Finders Corp, Future Enterprises, for training in computer operations.
Wow.
Additionally, the founder of the commune's wife, Isabella Petty, was employed by the CIA from 1952 to 1961.
Interesting.
So this all was reported in the Washington Times, and I did find this article on their website. Like this, they really did report after this first came out. But who knows? You know, these are just loose ends. These are just coincidences, potentially.
There's just so much kooky stuff happening.
I know. So these findings led the D.C. police who investigated to conclude that the Finders organization is and has been utilized by the Central Intelligence Agency as a disinformation service spreading non-essential, non-critical information to various organizations throughout the United States and overseas. And I did see that police report where the police officer wrote that. So that, he definitely did think that. The Customs Service documents that prompted attention to the alleged CIA Finders tie include an April 13th, 1987 report by a customs agent who participated in raids on Finders properties in Washington and Virginia. The agent provided documents to the Washington Times suggesting the CIA was blocking investigations of the Finders by the FBI and D.C. police. A later customs report says the CIA, quote, admitted to owning the Finders organization as a front for a domestic computer training operation, but that it had gone bad, end quote, the newspaper said. So that I saw the newspaper report, but again, this customs agent was never named, and afterwards the CIA was just like, no, not really, haha, and everyone was like, okay, we drop it now, and everyone dropped it. So that's kind of where the facts and the speculation lie. And I think what's most interesting about this incident, like we said, is that it's not hard for people to believe could be a weird CIA thing. And that's telling itself for the public perception of the CIA. We know they do weird shit in secret, so when we see some weird shit done in secret, it's not shocking to believe it's them.
Yeah, and that's why we're all like, oh, our CIA agent.
Yeah, our CIA agent and our computers watching us. Hi, love you. So that brings us almost to current, as much information as we have anyway. So we're almost done here. The most recent kind of thing that the CIA has been involved in is obviously Afghanistan, right? So in the 1980s and 90s, we talked about this a bit in our episode about ICE, which is Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The CIA was heavily involved in political issues and drug trafficking in Afghanistan all throughout the 80s and 90s leading up to 9/11. From 1978 to 1992, during the Afghan War, the communist Afghan government was being fought by anti-communist Afghan guerrilla fighters. The Soviet Union intervened in Afghanistan in support of the Afghan communist government, and the U.S. was not happy. The CIA, in turn, paired with the ISI in Pakistan, which is their intelligence group, and both of them together backed insurgency groups known as the Mujahideen, you're so good at pronunciations, on behalf of the U.S., providing them with financial assistance and establishing military training posts to recruit more fighters. So the CIA sent agents out to Afghanistan to monitor the progress and success of these initiatives. They had a pretty active role. They were like, yes, it looks great. And more than 100,000 people came into contact with these CIA and ISI training facilities. And it was actually one of those CIA training facilities that Osama bin Laden trained. And he did a number of CIA tasks, right? Like he worked with the CIA in that capacity. However, the Mujahideen rebels were also engaging heavily in drug trafficking while fighting the Soviet-supported government. Gulbuddin Hekmatyar was one of the leading drug lords and biggest heroin refiners in the area, and also the largest recipient of CIA military support.
Yeah. Oh my, I mean, there's just so many things with the CIA in Afghanistan that even I know is just like a light reader. Well, maybe not light, but like a reader of general news.
General news, right? So the same CIA supplied trucks and mules that had carried arms into Afghanistan to fight the communists were also being used to transport opium to laboratories along the Afghan-Pakistan border. The output provided up to 1/2 of the heroin used annually in the United States and 3/4 of that used in Western Europe. U.S. officials admitted in 1990 that they had failed to investigate or take action against the drug operation because of a desire not to offend their Pakistani and Afghan allies. In 1993, an official of the DEA dubbed Afghanistan the new Colombia of the drug world. And the last one kind of ties in with it, and it's just a funny one to end it on. I know this has been a huge episode. But in 2005, the CIA, by this point, they were like, oh no, we made Osama bin Laden. That maybe wasn't good. And they were trying to figure out ways to take down Osama bin Laden, right? And one of the plans they came up with is so ridiculous that I had to include it. They commissioned Donald Levine, who helped develop G.I. Joes for Hasbro back in the 60s, to help them develop an action figure of Osama bin Laden, but like one that looked really scary. So the goal was to create a toy so frightening that children would be traumatized by it and nobody would ever listen to anything Osama bin Laden had to say to them.
What? I feel like that might have the opposite effect of being like, cool.
Okay, well, wait till you hear how they did it though. It was supposed to just be a normal Osama bin Laden action figure, but the face was going to be painted with a heat-dissolving material, which would then accidentally peel off and make Osama bin Laden look like a red, scary demon. So the idea was supposed to be like, whoops, we didn't mean for that to happen. That's so wild that his face just peeled off and now he looks like a weird demon. But the idea was rejected in the prototype stage. They did make at least one prototype, though, because it went up for auction in 2014.
Oh my god, how much did it go for?
I don't know. We could probably look online, though. I should have looked.
That's what we'll look up later. My guess is $10,000.
I feel like it could be more. It's a piece of U.S. history.
14.
I
think I'm lowballing.
Well, yeah, so that's it. So that's all the declassified information and one light conspiracy theory about the CIA that I came up with. So that's who they are. That's what they do. That's what they're all about.
It seems like this might be yet another reason why we don't have, healthcare, housing, education, all just the things that help us, live.
Right, yeah, because that would be communism, and the CIA is just, like, really obsessed with communism.
They're like, life, that's kind of commie, don't you think?
Right. I think that, yeah, it's like, really the CIA is just, like, a private army tasked with upholding capitalism.
Yeah, they're just horny for capitalism.
Yeah, they're horny for capitalism, they're horny for sex workers, they're horny for drugs, and they're horny for sex dolls, and they're just horny for everything, and they're just like, I want to keep rich people so rich all the time. I want the rich Americans to own all the sugar plantations in Cuba because that's not creepy, and they just love it. And that's what they do. They just go around the world trafficking drugs and fighting communists like it's fucking 1945.
Like, drugs, cool.
Yeah.
Horniness, cool.
Yeah.
But like destroying like basically like so many people's lives.
Yeah.
Like, you know how like when someone like kind of fucks up your life, you're like, fuck this person. Like,
yeah.
Like it's so, you're just like, but imagine like an entire like governmental agency that's doing that to like millions of people.
I know. It's
like,
it's wild.
They're just like assholes, man.
Yeah, they're assholes. It kind of reminds me.
It's beyond that. Not to make light of it. Like, this is fucking some wild and serious shit.
It's kind of like when you meet somebody at a party. It's usually a guy. We'll say you meet a guy at a party, and he's talking to you, and he's like, yeah, I like drugs. And you're like, cool, I like drugs too. And then they're like, yeah, I like sex workers. And you're like, yeah, I love sex workers. That's sick that you like sex workers. Cool. And then they're like, yeah, I'm into like mind control and like thought experiments. Like, do you think you could read my mind? And you're like, haha, this is kind of fun. This seems innocuous and funny. I'm glad you're interested in weird paranormal things because that makes this conversation fun. And then they're also like, yeah, I also fully support imperialism and I think we should kill poor people. And you're like, whoa, are you a libertarian? And they're like the libertarians of the government agencies. They're like kind of cool and fun like a quarter of the time. And the rest of the time they're just like, I literally want everyone to die. Painful, violent deaths.
Dude, why do I think that if I say abolish the CIA, I'm going to get dosed against my will?
That's how I feel too. I'm like, damn, should we even be making this episode? Am I paranoid? Other people say shit about the CIA. They're all declassified documents. People know. But yeah, it's scary.
Please don't dose us.
So yeah, that's it. If you don't hear another podcast episode from Madeline and Kenna, I guess the CIA killed us, man.
Yeah.
Or gave us a ton of LSD and try to make us have sex with people.
Oof.
Or maybe it's fine. Maybe they'll try to make us have sex with somebody as hot and sexy as Fidel Castro was to that woman when he was like, you can't kill me, let's make love. And it's like, oh shit, it's pretty interesting. Maybe they'll send us to do that to some sexy political power. I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? Anyway, that's the CIA episode.
Or is it?
Dun dun dun. The end.
Thanks so much for listening. If you would like to support us, we are on Patreon. And for $2 a month, you can leave us messages, which we may answer in bonus episodes or regular episodes. And did I mention we have bonus episodes? Yes. It's on Patreon. If you look up Pick Me Up, I'm Scared. Or you don't have to. You don't have to do anything except for, we would love that if you listen to us, and that is great. Thank you again.